This is absurd.
I appreciate your speech.
This is absurd.
Many people are questioning the victory.
But you brought up the topic. I appreciate your speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech. Violating the Statue of Liberty. Violating the Statue of Liberty. Violating the Statue of Liberty.
Throw your perception down to the ground and see it swallowed by the snow. Maybe the open mind is a void where nothing ever really grows. Maybe you're outside and I'm in the confines of what I know. I lost my voice out here, and without it I am never going home. Never going home. Never going home. Our voice is being stolen. Picture me, capital steps, eyes swollen, carrying a sign reading "We are being lied to." If healthcare for all was a full nude, Mitch McConnell's only giving side boob. Ugh. Only making promises to wave a little hope right in your face and then deny you. So pardon me if I would rather burn my fucking vote to defy you. And I hope it makes you hate me, makes you feel like I'm just wasting any chance of bringing change. But I am not complicit in what brought us to this place, and I will not support us being further led astray. And I don't care the color hearse that carries us away. The filth on both the blue and red makes each a sickly gray, and it sickens me to witness just how quickly we obey, how quickly we accept the meager scraps that fall our way. Scraps supposed to last us 30 days, scraps that barely cover bills that can't be paid, and scraps that couldn't pay for Nancy's chocolate for a day. And all the thoughts and prayers in the world can't fix it, cause I'm drowning in my thoughts and I don't fucking pray. And if this is where you tell me that's the problem, there's the door, pal, thanks for staying. And if Jill's right, all you have to do is just swallow and you can play the game. In that case, Jill, I won't be playing. So how about you save your blame and try to change somebody who still doesn't know which way they're swaying? I won't vote for a rapist, that's all I'm saying. Land of the free, and you'll know us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper stretch. How sweet, she said, bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead, where the thin blue line meets razor's edge, and where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death and drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections, step by step, till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs, all laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer. That 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time you want all of us, but you hide in your size unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You'll let it inside, and you'll say that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. The pen went straight to your head. Mind what you hide in your size unsaid, and your eyes turn the line to the signs on a red. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it in. I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the ore flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send $1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the capital wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. Know to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Hi, everyone. Whoa, I don't know what that was. I kind of showed you screen before. Okay, anyway. What's up? It's Tuesday night. It's Indy. It's IndieNewsNow Live. It's time to do another show. Hope everybody had a good week. Lots of distractions, lots of psyops, lots of nonsense happening. I'm going to do something a little different that I don't normally do and talk about business. Conspiriality testing. Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Hopefully it works. Over on Rumble. We're over live on Rumble. We're on YouTube. I see Fred Edward, a few others over there. How are you? Lee Argent. We're over on Substack. We're over live on 9 platforms. That's what we do. Kick, Twitter, Twitch, 2 different YouTube channels. Where else are we? We're over on Rumble, like I said. 2 different Twitch channels. Stenton Bloom is here. How are you? So we are getting started here. We're going to talk about SpaceX. SpaceX is the thing that everybody's been talking about today, or not today, but for the last week since they decided to do their IPO. I think a lot of people don't necessarily even understand exactly what's in SpaceX at this point, what it's comprised of. I brought a couple of things to do a real deep dive on that. And, yeah, we'll take a look at what's happening there in a long fuck Israel segment. The rest of the show might as well be that. We're going to have a long one, and then we're going to talk specifically about a new Alan McLeod article. You know, Alan's an Indie Media Award honoree. So Alan wrote an article this week about how, and we've talked about this before, Christian churches on the West Coast are being geofenced and geotargeted by Israel for, their pro-genocide message, really. That's right, Fred. We can start that off very, very quickly with a fuck Israel. Even though YouTube doesn't like it, I don't care. Got a quick lightning round, a couple things. And actually, Lee, I'm going to make mention and link to that at the end of the show that Oz did a live stream on Saturday for the first time since we lost Shanda. So everybody check that out. And he's got a new thing starting, I believe, July 11th is the target date. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Before we do, as I always ask, support independent media because we are completely user-funded. We need it more than ever. And these are the amazing people who've already done so. Really appreciate every single one of them. You know the ways to do it. I do this every week. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. co-fi.com/Indie News Network. At paypal.me/Indie News Network. Monthly, you can subscribe, patreon.com/Indie News Network. Over on Substack, IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live now, or at INNNewsletter.com. I actually revamped the weekly interactive newsletter. I'll bring that up at the end. And then IndieNewsNow.com. That's our website where we aggregate news 24/7. We co-stream whenever INN is live. And we also have a merch link and a link to support with a Stripe contribution directly. So thank you to everyone who already does that. Like I said, we're going to talk about SpaceX. And that's where I want to start tonight, is in trying to debunk some of this hype. I know we're all, none of us likes Elon Musk because he's a multi-gazillionaire and now he's literally a trillionaire. And everyone has reasons for not liking him. I want to remove the emotion from this. I want to look at this fundamentally as a company and forget all they do, forget the politics of this. I'm looking fundamentally at a public company to be invested in for profit, for loss, for speculation, for where it's going to go in the future. I want to look at this as objectively as possible without allowing emotion to really get in the way of the analysis here. Go Start, I'm glad you did not almost miss it. Alexander the All Right, good to see you. Thank you so much for all your support, for all the shares. Really appreciate you. Good to see you at the live stream. So we're going to get into SpaceX tonight, and then again, we're going to talk a lot about all the crap that Israel's been up to like we do every week. So we'll start again with, let me open this up. All right. So I don't normally start at a website like themotleyfool.com. So I'm going to be using a couple of sites I don't normally use that are not totally independent, although I'm going to use independent analysis in the end to break all of this down. Though there are a couple of points I wanted to bring in from these articles that I didn't see brought elsewhere. So that's why I'm bringing it. So this is really important. This was an article written by this Adria Semino. Now, I don't know how independent or corporate she is. She used to work for Bloomberg a long time ago. She is a tech reporter. She was corporate. I don't know if she is now, but her article, and this is an opinion piece, though it's important, don't buy SpaceX shares before considering the 20 most important words in the company's prospectus. And I'm going to skip down to the 20 most important words, which is right here. So first it talks about their leadership as what they've accomplished as a business. They operate 3 units. Last year completed the most orbital launches of any company. Made important progress in its development of reusable rockets. Okay. But that's not even what this is about. And that's what we're going to look at. All right. SpaceX's satellite-based internet service. We know Starlink, right? It brought in $11.4 billion, while the space unit generated another $4 billion. That's on a total of $18 billion in revenue. All right. At the end of the first quarter, Starlink subscribers had topped 10 million across 164 countries from nothing. It's pretty wild how they built a market from nothing out of Starlink. And again, using government subsidies and government and private satellites, they built this network of spot, and he's got more satellites up there allegedly than anyone, right? But this is the thing. As I mentioned, these businesses are complementary, with the space business being particularly key to the general plan, since many of his goals involve launching materials into orbit. The ability of SpaceX to transport its own material needed for the connectivity in AI businesses is a huge advantage and results in cost savings, particularly through reusable rockets, if he can ever get them there. Now, again, it came all the way back down. It's down to 157. It launched at 150. Here's the 20 important words. Okay. Many of the company's plans and efforts, quote, involves significant technical complexity, unproven technologies, or technologies that do not exist, and such initiatives may not achieve commercial viability. They told you this. These include initiatives such as developing large-scale AI data centers in space, producing AI chips at scale, and transportation to the moon and beyond. Because Toy Story stuff. Okay, into infinity and beyond. Right. So why are these words so important? Because they're clearly stating that if the tech doesn't work out, some of its biggest goals may never be accomplished, which is what all the hype and speculative pricing that's built in is assuming it's going to be. Of course, this is worst case scenario, but it is a risk. This is because SpaceX's future success is closely linked to reaching at least some of these big goals. I thought it was really important to bring this. They don't expect all of it to even happen, but they're acting like everybody needs to expect like it's going to happen. Well, they didn't lose to Iran. I mean, SpaceX didn't lose to Iran. In truth, SpaceX actually helped infiltrate Iran and tried to lead a failed color revolution. That didn't fail because of SpaceX. They were actually able to communicate because of SpaceX. SpaceX helped them. It's just the CIA, especially without NED and USAID, is so hamstrung and incompetent that it was obvious to all. That's why it failed. All right. And yeah, I mean, we're getting our asses kicked. But anyway, now, one other thing I wanted to point out, this is an independent outlet, a award-winning independent outlet, ProPublica. They won a Pulitzer. They did a study, or they were able to get from court records a list of the foreign investors from SpaceX. Nobody else reported this, but investors in China secretly acquired stakes. So now you're helping, China being involved with this. Now it's, this was national security. Now it gets very muddy. But one previously unreported SpaceX investor has ties to Chinese military contractors, only revealed after ProPublica went to court to obtain it. So this happened earlier this week on the 18th, 5 days ago. All right. New details come from a private investor list obtained by ProPublica that sheds light on a particularly delicate issue for Musk's rocket company. Again, that's what we're going to learn. It's not really a rocket company. It's a data center company that just happens to dabble in space exploration with its future plans to expand there. And they need the rockets and everything else in order to support that. But that's not really what this is. So, while there is no ban on Chinese investment in U.S. military contractors, such investment is heavily regulated. How is there no ban on Chinese investment in military contractors? That, by the way, is also insane. So, where's the thing? I read the company's IPO last week was the largest ever, making Musk the world's first trillionaire. I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. Musk also has extensive business interests in China, where Tesla builds many of its cars. They're losing market share like crazy over there because of all the stuff that he's done with Trump. New records detail at least a dozen investors with addresses in mainland China, Hong Kong, or Russia, who acquired stakes in SpaceX years ago through a middleman firm in the U.S. called Tomales Bay Capital. The investments are relatively small, ranging from $800,000 to $40 million, made between 2018 and 2021. This one investment came from an entity owned by David Su. He's the co-founder of the prominent Beijing venture capital firm MPCI. So if these guys are going to be working with NASA and our military, or how does it work that they're also going to be embedded or involved, have Chinese investors? I don't know. But that's not the guy that we're talking about. There's no evidence that Su did anything improper. The key question from the U.S. government's perspective is whether China-based investors get access to non-public information about their technology or strategies, which I'm guessing they don't. They're silent investors. Now, the other one, a lawyer for Tomales Bay, said that the firm has not provided any non-public sensitive info regarding the company to investors. I believe that. I genuinely believe that most of the investors are not calling up the board of SpaceX to get information about trade secrets that the company's up to so that they can then duplicate them or steal them in Russia or China or wherever. All right. Here it is. The new documents come from a dispute in Delaware involving Tomales Bay Capital. The court records were unsealed this week after ProPublica moved to make them public with help of the attorneys from Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press and the law firm Shaw Keller. Tomales Bay Capital appealed to the Delaware Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of ProPublica. They wanted to keep this silent. Why? Because Tomales Bay Capital is run by an investor named Iqbaljit Kalon. All right. He's been close to SpaceX's leadership and even involved in the company's operations. This is the guy who's been investing for all these foreigners that could potentially set off red flags with the government and the military, but because they're doing it through this cutout, it's fine. All right. This guy has been with the company in one form or fashion longer than I have, which means that from the beginning, it's got foreign money invested in it. Really interesting. Before SpaceX went public, this guy made a fortune by acting as a middleman for investors, hoping to add the rocket company to their portfolio. His firm regularly bought SpaceX stock, packaged it into investment funds, then charged fees to investors who bought pieces of those funds. And I'm sure he was not scrutinous as to who's investing in them to see if the military wouldn't like that. While ProPublica and other outlets have previously reported on the existence of Chinese investors in SpaceX, the identities of most of the rocket company's investors have been closely guarded. This investor list adds hundreds of names to the public picture of who owns SpaceX. The list details investments in several Tomales Bay Capital funds that have acquired SpaceX stock. It's possible that some of the funds own stakes in other companies too. It's actually quite possible and quite likely. Right, so here you've got Betsy DeVos as one of the other investors, a British Virgin Islands company owned by Indonesian billionaires. Then you've got shell companies whose ultimate owners remain hidden. Like, this is just shady and shady. Look at this. One of them actually called themselves a Delaware LLC called HAL 9001 Partners Fund I. All right, HAL, like, from Space Odyssey. I cannot do that, Dave. Like AI data center investing, it's kind of funny, right? So this one was the Treasury Department recently fined a company that was co-owned by this guy hundreds of millions of dollars for managing a different investment on behalf of a sanctioned Russian oligarch. And it's not Putin, by the way. It's one of his buddies. So that's also interesting. So you've got foreign investment that they can't necessarily track that's literally having to be exposed through lawsuits of the shadow company that's investing in them to get lists of who's investing in this damn thing. But here's the other big thing that I wanted to point out. And this is going to run a video autoplay, and I don't want it to autoplay. This happened after its day one rally that ran the company up to a valuation of higher than even Amazon and Walmart, which is crazy. company has no earnings. This is the other thing I wanted to point out is this chart right here. This chart is the most important thing. SpaceX has a mega cap price tag. Now, this was found on Yahoo Finance from AlphaSpace. SpaceX has a mega cap price tag, meaning that it's right now priced as like the 8th most valuable stock in the world. More than Meta, more than Tesla. It's worth more than Tesla. They don't make anything. But they lost $8 billion last year, whereas every other company in this space, at this level, is making billions a year in profit. They're losing billions. Right? Natalie, I don't know if it's the AI bubble that's popping, maybe, but what it's telling me is that there is hype around this investment and around this company that is completely unwarranted. That's interesting. I'm not showing any glitches here. I've had a couple people say that it looks like the stream is glitchy over on Rumble. I don't think anybody's having any problems over on YouTube. Overvalued is absolutely true. Beyond overvalued. And we're going to get to that in a second. Because our friend Rich Lutsky, Crying Grim, wrote a very long deep dive article breaking down all of this IPO and specifically what is SpaceX as a company. Because you heard ProPublica refer to it multiple times as a rocket company. But how many of you knew that SpaceX also owns Twitter, XAI, as well as Grok? They own Grok. So let's get into this. Lies, damn lies, and SpaceX AI, the IPO that wasn't, and the crash that might be. How one man's creative financial chores might doom his entire empire in one arrogant Tesla bot-like motion. So again, this is from friend of the show, friend of the network, Crying Grim, aka Rich Lutsky. He says, "Dearest reader, I come bearing news. Elon Musk, recently minted as the world's first trillionaire, if you don't count the Rothschilds or some of the other people, has managed to do something that, to my eye, looks quite risky long term. Something built on a foundation of sand, assembled out of playing cards, and balanced on a fucking egg. Swept up in the headlines of the SpaceX IPO, I saw something people appeared to miss at first read. Some cracks in the newly poured concrete foundation. The simple truth of what SpaceX really is now and what the real numbers break down into. So let's get on with it." So here's the picture from the NASDAQ. As I'm sure you're aware, Elon Musk owns SpaceX. That is not a contested fact. Elon also owns XAI. That is not a contested fact. But in March of 2026, SpaceX moved to bring XAI into its orbit, acquiring it with limited fanfare. Meaning that the people that gave him $44 billion to buy Twitter from Jack Dorsey and investors and take it private just got paid out. We don't know exactly how much they got paid out yet. We'll find that. I can look into that. But fast forward to now, and SpaceX, the combined $1.25 trillion company, was being listed on the NASDAQ. The details of the deal interested Rich far more than anything about the headline figures. We'll get to that in a moment. You need your context window refreshed. So he's got the headline figures that 2026 Q1 capital expenditures for XAI, again, that's Grok only, $7.7 billion. SpaceX is spending versus revenue as a percentage. 2023, they were only spending 42%. Q1 of this year, they spent 215% of their revenue, 215% more than what they generated. Their revenue was $18 billion. Their net loss was $5 billion for last year. So they're losing money, like I said. And this is really funny. The NASDAQ IPO has the combined SpaceX and XAI entity at $26.5 trillion of what they call TAM, or the total addressable market, which 80% is related directly to XAI, the current combined entity being classified. This is important with the SEC under code 7370, meaning computer programming data processing services. Not an aerospace or telecommunications company, but officially registered with the agencies that list their stock. They are a data center and computing company. AI. Grok. Who sets the valuation is a really difficult question. There are auditors, but then it's also the investors set the valuation, and then you multiply the stock price times the number of outstanding shares, add in Elon's share, and that's what the stock's actually technically worth. Normally, a stock is worth 2 times earnings. The stock has no earnings, so it's a lot based on speculation. The NASDAQ IPO, like you said, shows computer programming. Sounds good, right? What's not to love about a bunch of eggheads making rockets and AI robots? It's a marriage made in heaven, surely. Rockets, AI, robotics, Asimov smiles. Foundations of future space exploration unfolding before our eyes. But therein lies the rub. And this is a picture of the hardware. This is from Colossus One, one of the data centers that they built. He says, AI, AI, AI. Okay, now that I've said the obligate number of times per investor demands, like a tech CEO striding onto the Computex stage, we can talk turkey. Generative, general AI, and more niche-tailored, specialized AI is quickly becoming one of the hottest investment properties of all time, or the world's biggest bubble waiting to pop, depending on who you ask. Rich says, I tend to be quite ambivalent. I understand the purpose and the mechanics of the tool. I see a whole galaxy of potential uses, and then I look at the rest of you meatbags and realize what we'll actually end up doing with it. If you're uninitiated or just otherwise refused to care when it came around the first time, Elon Musk famously purchased Twitter in October of 2022 for $44 billion, and alongside it, poured untold sums of money into developing his own in-your-face, inoffensive language reasoning, creative general AI model, Grok. Grok, of course, has made headlines for all the wrong reasons, especially for a tool that was initially sold as an unabashed and unwilling to dabble in propaganda, an agentic bullshit detector that would go on to be manipulated repeatedly, allegedly, by Musk and company to censor or override Grok's natural token generation, which are thoughts and words for AI. I remember a couple times they literally had to shut it down for espousing Nazi talking points. Putting these aside, Grok has not had an easy life, nor is the team behind it. So he goes into some history here that's important. The initial construction of the data center to house Grok, Colossus One, went well enough. It went quickly, starting in April 2024 and beginning phase 1 real-time operations just 122 days later, with 100,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs all operating as they were told to by their firmware. By 2025, Colossus One had grown considerably. Now, a mixed fleet. Now you have 150,000 H100s, 50,000 H200s, and 30,000 more advanced modern GB200 Blackwell stock. What he's talking about here are the video cards, GPUs. These are the video cards that run the data centers. They bring all the computing power and all the heat, by the way. This build-out was less a simple data center and more a testament to Western hubris, building at unparalleled speed while maintaining the concept of more is better. If you learn anything from Rich's aviation pieces, it's that mixed fleets can actually be a mixed bag. Running only the Boeing 737 and sticking to the basics can be a lot more profitable and functional than trying to orchestrate your airline's functions across 737s, A320s, and Comac C919s, right? Now imagine doing that on a code base level in real time. The system simply isn't designed for the task, and the cracks begin to show immediately. You cannot piecemeal a supercomputer together out of different generations and platforms. Cray did not allow you to fucking mix and match in the 1970s. So right out of the gate, Colossus 1 and Grok's training therein was cock-blocked. Or Grok-blocked? Funny. Grok could not use the facility properly, and thus it was decided that XAI would rent out the ineffective mixed platform's capacity to its competitor Anthropic, developers of Claude Code, who in turn would use it for Claude's inference work, rather than Grok's model training as it initially expected. Now, this would bring immediate cash into the operations, which helps, but not at the scale necessary to keep the venture profitable. So it's offsetting cost is all it's doing. Anthropic, however, would end up at just 11% effective utilization rate of the Colossus 1 facility. So watch this one. It never really used it as more than a relief valve for other providers, a backup plan for a backup plan. And I love this line. It's poetic, really. One of Grok's largest competitors, Claude, running inference work on hardware built specifically for Grok for pennies on the dollar at 1/10 the utilization. Welcome to technology. That had to catch in the throat for the people at XAI. I feel badly for the engineering team that had to experience that. To reuse my airline framing device from earlier, imagine if Delta had 11% plane utilization purely by renting some to Southwest, and the other 89% of their fleet was left sitting parked, waiting to be used, but completely lifeless. That is a level of platform or fleet management failure that would make anyone wince from embarrassment. This wasn't Grok's home. It's a co-location for Anthropic. This wouldn't be the end of Grok, though, as Musk and XAI would shift their attention to a new, more streamlined 550,000 strong fleet of NVIDIA GB200 and GB300 Blackwell GPUs. A better performing and faster class of architecture, entirely unified. They literally built a second facility not far from Colossus 1, breaking ground last March, right around the same time that Colossus 1 had been bloated, leased to Anthropic. They opened their doors 6 months ago in January, with full build-out taking place now and expected to finish sometime in the middle of 2026. That's crazy. But worse, you've got Google involved. And here's how Google is intertwined in all of this. And I didn't even know this until I read this article, which is one of the reasons I'm bringing it. Now, we know that Google had been an early investor in SpaceX. In 2015, Google would enter into an arrangement with Fidelity to acquire a 10% share in SpaceX for $1 billion. Now the company's worth trillions. They owned 10% for $1 billion, with $900 million coming from them, in a move that at the time must have seemed incredibly straightforward. Space is the next frontier. This company is top of the class. Space telco is the next market, so on and so forth. Easy money. As it turns out, 11 years later, things aren't so easy, and they aren't as clear either. So, follow this logic. A decade ago, Google committed $900 million to fund rockets, space exploration, and SATCOM telco stuff. Now, they're paying rent on the data centers that their initial funding helped create, running advanced AI workloads in their competitor's house just to compete with the product they technically have a diluted from 10% stake in. Because it's now that it's gone public, the 10% is no longer 10%. People think it's now about 5 to 8%. By 2025, XAI is building its first server farm, Colossus 1. Google sees this, knows it has its own ambitions with Google Cloud Services and Gemini, but it lacks the critical infrastructure that XAI has already built and plans to expand further. So, in 2026, they pounce, entering an agreement that takes their title from investor to renter. A feedback loop of Google's own investment into SpaceX, now funding the rack space that Google intends to rent. A landlord, investor, and product competitor, but on a curiously cushy, one-sided contract. So basically, they let Musk write this contract for himself, which is crazy. The terms of the deal, released just days ago on June 5th, state Google plans to pay $920 million a month to XAI, or SpaceX, for 32 months of capacity inside the new data center, Colossus 2, that literally just opened this year. In this contract, Google has a very handy clause that permits them to walk away or seek reduced costs if the capacity can't be delivered before September 30th of this year. If in the future they decide to walk away, they only have to give 90 days notice after starting November 1st. All they need to do is 90 days, they're out of this contract. So that's a good term, but $920 million a month for the space. In short, now Google has Twitter by the balls. He's going to explain how. Not only was it an instrumental investor a decade before it mattered, it's now adding more funding into the mix in the form of this very generous, mutually beneficial deal that it can walk away from at any time within 3 months if it wants to. The real sweet meat, and that's like a lobster term, the sweet meat, though, the part he found most juicy, not only does Google directly benefit from the arrangement in the short and midterms, both boosting their own investment in SpaceX and finding low-cost, high-yield capacity available now, in the long term, Google stands to benefit from something even more to their bottom line. An effective Mobius strip of market control via the funding it injects and the profits it reaps, while keeping the whole thing quietly away at arm's distance, just so long as it doesn't blow up in their faces. So they're profiting from Twitter and from Musk and from all of this without anybody really knowing how much they're actually involved, is what he's saying. However, if Musk does something truly off the rails, or if Colossus 2 or 3 or beyond fail to work out, Google is highly exposed, not just as an investor, but as an entity deeply dependent on the infrastructure. Gemini could crash. Their enterprise AI push rests on compute capacity from XAI. They would be compelled to find it elsewhere, or their plan fails to materialize. In essence, Google rented a room in that house of cards after paying Elon Musk to build the damn thing and watching him install himself as dictator ad infinitum before signing the rental agreement. Read on to understand that part. It's a really juicy tidbit, too. So this is where it gets really technical about investing, retail investing, front loading, and governance. He says, like I mentioned to Rich, who's pretty sharp savvy with this stuff, the terms of the IPR are far more interesting than the actual pricing or percentage of target addressable market, total addressable market. That's already telling enough data, but there's more to the story here, a lot more, and I don't want to come across as glib or overreaching, but I sense some bullshit afoot. I think he's smart to sense that bullshit. You see, normally, large corporations have corporate boards, shareholders, institutional partners, corporate governance, executives, so on. And these secondary voices all moderate the tenor of the chief executive. They influence, guide, they inform at the head of the table who's making the decisions. Under this IPO, Musk doesn't answer to any such board. He now controls 82.4% of the voting power and 42% of the company's total equity, not just Class A shares. He now acts as a definition-accurate autocrat, a capitalist dictator who has no structure to hold him account beyond the most basic levels of individual or institutional shareholders and any remnants of government oversight left. But even there, there's another catch, and it's quite unusual for an IPO. Okay, I know I keep saying that, but this whole thing stinks. Here's the other rub. SpaceX and underwriters initially targeted 30% reserve of available stock for individual retail investors, eventually settling on 20% after considerable backlash in the financial sector. For frame of reference, standard IPOs tend to have 5 to 10% of all shares produced in the transaction reserved for this class of investor. They wanted to have 30% reserved for individual retail investors. That's BlackRock. That's Peter Thiel. That's Larry Ellison potentially. Normally, they would put that at 5 to 10%. Here you're looking at, they wanted it at 30, they settled on 20. Having double and wanting triple gives an indication that Musk is further insulating himself from shocks or stonewalls by front-loading a disproportionate amount of retail investors. You and I, the layman, but the ones favorable to his personality. In a nutshell, he's looking for yes men to buy the stock, to let him rule as he sees fit, and to reap all the rewards of a publicly listed company without any of the meaningful oversight that would take place in the background during a normal business day. He answers to nobody, not shareholders, not a board. His loyal fans who still think "to the moon" is a real catchphrase and that their NFT is going to make a comeback someday will never ever show up to a shareholder meeting and hold him to account or say anything critical. They'll fawn over him, gloss over the problems, and enable him to continue. And then we come to the China problem. If all of this wasn't a sleepwalking through a disaster moment already, there's strong competition on the horizon from the east. Now remember, this is now primarily a data center company, not a rocket and space exploration company. DeepSeek, my favorite AI company, a name some will recognize already as a disruptive influence on the sector, is making strides even while facing the brunt of U.S. imperialism in the form of technology transfer withholding or embargo. Forced to exist in a literal scarcity mentality, DeepSeek takes an entirely different approach from the more and more expensive is better refrain of the West and XAI. They're able to compute a whole lot more on a whole lot less. Starting with a splash, DeepSeek R1 caught the attention of researchers and users alike for its complex reasoning, high-fidelity output, and cost per token exchange, i.e., how much your message to it and its response costs. It's a fraction of what OpenAI or Grok costs. This was a monumental moment and something that made established players sit up fully and take note because it was unexpected. DeepSeek should not be possible given the limited access to high bandwidth memory and complex high shelf silicon NPUs and GPUs. So what they did was they took older NVIDIA chips and an NVIDIA video card GPUs and made it work. We're talking about data centers, and we're talking about China competing with Grok and XAI and SpaceX, which now owns the data centers that own Twitter and Grok and XAI. It's all kind of got merged into one with this new IPO, right? So the founder of DeepSeek and his team managed to not just beat the competition where they stood, they blew them out of the water in an incredibly efficient manner. His background in quantitative finance gave him a strong understanding that every exchange, every watt, every millisecond and floating point calculation was required to justify its own existence. Not a struggle mentality, but one of ruthless efficiency. So he talks more about a little bit about DeepSeek, which is another one of these large language model AI, but it's Chinese-based. They basically scraped all of ChatGPT and then ran it a whole lot cheaper on older technology and better than OpenAI did. And Sam Altman was freaking out. All right. The reason why is architectural innovation, pen to paper, days in the library, long nights of coding, trying, failing, doing it again. Skip meals, missed showers, family that loves you and misses you but rarely sees you, dedication, belief in something, math, prayer, rebooting, stress. To go into the mechanics of a large language model is beyond the scope of this piece, so I'll keep it plain. Understand this, DeepSeek committed to finding ways to reduce not just memory and GPU utilization per token exchanged, but also to improve the natural flow and prose of their agents, becoming near lifelike, almost scary good, able to read you like a book and get you to talk in a way that no other can. He says other AI agents I've engaged with are perfectly okay if a little limp, inoffensive, lifeless, and straight-laced, offering lectures where there should be something else. Okay, DeepSeek is quite a bit more intense and natural feeling I've found. Right? There is some level of censorship he's talking about. It doesn't have that lifeless drone problem, not quite to the constraints of currently available Western-built models like Gemini, that's Google, or Grok, that's Twitter, or Anthropic, that's Claude Code. It's liberating to exchange with DeepSeek V4 Flash, not just for the quality of the output or the fantastic cost-to-performance ratio I enjoy, but the agent has abilities that no Western model has. There is some censorship, like I said. I asked it one time about Israel, and it didn't really want to give me an answer. Okay. What it says is that for similar tasks, DeepSeek is actually better than Grok or Gemini. So all of this money that Twitter is pouring into these data centers, they're already behind the curve because there's a Chinese competitor that's ahead of them already right now, despite all the money that they've dumped into it. Right? China out America yet again, but here we are, and it's just getting started. So he says, we've got quite a perfect storm here. A company quietly stumbling the path of financial insolvency, owned and controlled entirely by a mentally unstable man-child who had out-of-wedlock children with his employees, allegedly. A NASDAQ IPO claiming it has a $26.5 trillion of total addressable market, of which 22 to 23.375 trillion alone is Grok. Wait, what? Okay, so that alone is insane. No company at all has an addressable market of $22 trillion. There's not an addressable market right now of $22 trillion to spend on anything. If you got 100% of that market, it means nothing. So what he's saying, though, is that only leaves about $3 to $4 trillion for the addressable market of SpaceX. I've already given headline figures at the top, but this is nonsensical. I'm sorry. We're not even into the real potential problems yet, and it's already gone wrong. So $3 to $4 trillion for the total addressable market of SpaceX. They lost $8 billion last year. How the hell are they supposed to make $3 trillion? I asked several AI agents and human beings to check my math, but everyone I asked just said in response, Chuck, Jesus fucking Christ, really? Damn. I try to remain objective in those pieces that I bring you, but this is just fucking stupid. Holy bananas. This isn't a bubble. This is something that could suck up a fucking galaxy. Rover from The Prisoner will be impressed. This thing is too big to pop now, but just wait. If your dreams of high-end machine tools and NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs hitting the market dirt cheap and surplus auctions are keeping you going, read on, because it can still crash and take down multiple important mechanisms with it. So here's where he starts to speculate. All right. And he lays out all of these different inflection points where we're at right now. There are dozens, possibly hundreds of ways this whole situation could possibly go hopelessly wrong and cause knock-on effects in myriad institutions. Global aerospace, SATCOM and AI, plus the broader economy, the American space program, and potentially military contract fallout and potential self-harm. So let's just take a look at a few. I promise when we're done, we can look at how this might work out and reveal as totally misguided, but I'm not optimistic. So here's one of the vectors. You've got Musk, who's more than just a CEO, and I'm choosing my words deliberately to keep this piece flowing, lest it turn into that personal diatribe against the autocratic oligarch. Right? A founder who is simultaneously the most successful industrialist since Howard Hughes and the most unreliable narrator on the planet. He's also a heavy market manipulator. The man bought Twitter for $44 billion, renamed it, cratered the value by 3/4, then used it as the Buena Vista distribution company to his own world of Walt Disney futurism. An arm to sell you Tesla, X Finance, crypto, Grok. By the way, the Buena Vista distribution company is the secret holding company that Disney used to acquire all of the properties around Disney World so that nobody knew that Disney was doing that and got wise until it was too late. Musk has a public persona that oscillates between mad genius and 4chan troll. There is no in between. You either get meaningful activity, Tesla, his crown jewel, or you get nonsense from his personal opinion repertoire. This is a huge problem for a guy who's been accused of fraud, stalking, harassment, lies. It's a credibility problem. When you're the one at the top and you have a credibility problem, you need something to moderate that oscillation or to address at least one component of it. Something, anything. He doesn't. Next, you have the financial vector. Classifying SpaceX as a data center company while allowing 20% of initial stock to individual retail investors is very much in line with the logic of it's my company, my rocket, my AI, mine, that the West often displays. Greed, self-interest, short-sightedness. It's a giant concern given the consequences. The Google deal with jettison clause, the Colossus One debacle, being the primary and overwhelming platform for NASA right now. It's not just a house of cards if you squint. You can walk up, pull at the ace of spades, and watch it fall in real time. Unfortunately for all of us, meaningful advancements in sciences like AI, robotics, and space exploration would all suffer if it does. This isn't a metaphor. This is the kind of stuff you end up watching on YouTube on a channel like Cold Fusion long after KPMG and Deloitte show up to audit what's left and the fine elected people on the DC Hill start drafting their House and Senate committee hearing questions. This is Enron with data centers. But this is a huge problem with a bill that will come due. You can't unfuck it. You can bail it out, but you can't undo what just happened. All right? The governance vector, meaning that there is nobody around that can stop him if he wants to do stuff. There's no board. There's no one to blunt his whims. And then you have the techno-strategic planning vector. The rockets are real, built and proven in some cases. Starship represents genuine progress in terms of intergalactic travel, even if we're still barely leaving lower Earth orbit. He said his fight here isn't with the engineers or sauce. The sauce, it's fine. Inspirational even to go to the moon and beyond for real. Just not for meme coins. Starlink is a hot revenue generator and a tool of imperialism as shown by the U.S. forcing it into play in the Ukraine-Russia proxy war, but offers incredible advantage to the end user in non-combat situations too. The continued integration with aviation and cellular providers shows that Starlink, while messy and resource intensive, is viable. Well, It's viable, but I don't know if it's necessarily profitable or scalable or, doable. The launch market is real. The space part is still real. It's just being used as a loss leader and a narrative anchor for an AI play that seems likely to underdeliver and continue to be beaten at its own game by people who've had a $2 street cart noodle bowl for lunch and slept under their desk the night before. We're being out hustled. Then you have the human vector. This is a human toll, really. The people who tripped over themselves to pay $80,000 plus for a Cybertruck at launch. There were tons of them, only to be hopelessly disappointed, yet still somehow viciously defended at every turn. The retail investors who mortgage their futures today on the proviso that Elon has their best interests at heart and can't be second guessed. There's a ton of them. The engineers at Colossus One, who must have known before the order was placed that fragmenting the platform like that would cause untold problems, but couldn't say no or even explain why. The same team who watched that masterclass in speed relegated to 11% usage by their competitor, not their own model. The taxpayer who ends up footing the bill for the subsidies, the job creation, the pleasure of existing at all. That's one of the vectors. These are just the broader implications. So here's the big scenario. It's now early 2027. All of this collapses on its face and SpaceX tanks. The egg tilts slightly and the sands shift. The cards go flying. Grok 5 is a huge miss. Disjointed, unnatural tone and prose, slow, unable to compete even with its roommate, Gemini 4 Flash. Remember, they're also using Grok XAI servers. DeepSeek v4.5 releases and makes both look like child's play. SpaceX stock dips. Elon, in turn, goes on Twitter and spews a tirade, a really vulgar, hurtful, and long one. It doesn't play well for anyone. His individual retail investors protect his image and manage it in conversation, but the damage is done. He loses the Google contract as it violated some basic don't be a douchebag online term of the deal, and they exit. They take their business elsewhere. Anthropic moves on to a new version of Claude, and it no longer needs that 11% excess inference from Colossus One. Now you have a totally dead data center. They part ways. SpaceX is now hemorrhaging their 80% chunk of total addressable market in one fell swoop. The dip on Musk stocks bleeds into other tech stocks and causes a bit of a momentary mini crash, stopped by the quantitative easing on the government side very quietly, because Trump will step in to help out his buddy. This knock-on effect impacts not just the SpaceX brand, but all the tech companies in general, dragging them down in reputation by proxy. This becomes a bigger issue and continues to snowball. Musk loses control of the narrative, and eventually even his loyal fan base has had enough, kind of like Israel. They start selling off their now toxic shares. People start calling their money managers, telling them to drop SpaceX. The snowball continues, and eventually Musk is putting what little cash on hand he has into it rapidly just to prop it up. At some point, he calls it. He's tapping out, and the company will simply fold. The most likely response in this situation, I think, from the government side would be a formal bailout, perhaps even structured under a breakup vis-a-vis Dodd-Frank, with SpaceX launch or Aerospace becoming a government-owned entity under NASA or Department of Energy joint heading. It could even be a DoD joint heading. It could be a Defense Department. XAI, Grok, and the server farms are left to rot, sold off piece by piece on eBay to people who have the good intuition to look for high-value surplus kit. In the end, Musk would be made whole as the single largest shareholder, institutions next, and individual retail shareholders would be left holding the bag, last in line to be paid back. The system would continue, the human talent behind it, the XAI technicians and engineers who worked so hard to build it, would likely be headhunted by other companies. But SpaceX at the IPO would be gone. A footnote, choked to death on its own hubris. The biggest IPO in history, gone within a year or two. That's the doomsday scenario. That's assuming that nobody steps in to bail it out. Here's his other scenario that's really bad for everyone. That the above happens, but instead of a government bailout, the DC crowd turns their nose and balks. They refuse to bail out a trillionaire's property because his half-rate AI and cloud compute plans didn't work out. They say, so long, thanks for all the Tesla bots, and leave it to the market to decide. The market isn't interested. The market is fascinated by up-and-coming properties that could fill the gap of SpaceX, not as a compute or AI company, which is already a market well saturated, but for the aerospace engineering and space development or exploration, like Virgin stuff. They're content to wait 18 to 24 months for a new company that could supersede SpaceX and wish Elon all the best with Twitter and Tesla. SpaceX aerospace engineers lose work and are only somewhat actively sought by other companies who already have active talent pools full of promising candidates. Their working culture is lost to time. The bulk majority of non-specialized staff enter other fields out of necessity, promising future dreams snuffed out needlessly. I don't really care about them. An entire company of proud, knowledgeable people trapped, moving from progress to eventual destitution or at best, a lower class standing. Again, I'm not really weeping for the XAI engineers. NASA grinds to a near stop, buoyed by only the cosmonauts and the Boeing capsule on other hurriedly sourced launch partners, and desperately clinging to a big promise from another billionaire, Jeff Bezos, to rework Blue Origin to better support NASA requirements, as well as keep its own current consumer focus. That's years away, requiring untold sums. In turn, global aerospace development stagnates on the space front. China, which once held SpaceX as a cooperative participant and competitor in space exploration, no longer has that rivalry acting as a driving force, pushing it to be better, to innovate more, to think harder. So now they start to atrophy because the challenge is absent and the victor by default stagnates. Progress on a human level, on a species level, is lost. Time that cannot be recovered is squandered needlessly. All right. There's huge risk of losing global interest towards space exploration as a concept at this point, a kindred spirit for decades, lost by one tragic undertaking. Again, don't really give a shit about that. We got starving people on this planet. I don't need space exploration. And mostly space exploration is about they're polluting this world so bad it's going to be uninhabitable, so they're looking for ways to get the fuck off, and only the richest people are going to survive to do that. Fuck them. Or they want to put data centers in space because they're polluting the planet so badly. And again, fuck that. He also lays out a whole other scenario where scenario B happens, but former SpaceX staff get hired on elsewhere. Their spirit lives on through other companies and perhaps nowhere as large scale, but just as meaningful. That's nice. But the other big thing I wanted to talk about here, and my feeling is Google steps in, Alphabet. Remember that they've pumped this whole thing up from minute one. And the thing that I think Google is going to want out of all this, beyond the data centers, which they'll then take over and own because it's housing, it's housing Gemini already, is Twitter. Anybody remember Google Plus? Google really, really, really wanted to compete with Facebook. They created a social media company of their own called Google Plus that was a massive failure. It integrated with a ton of different stuff. But this entity collapsing could end up resulting in Google acquiring the Twitter portion of this organization if it ever has to be broken up. So he does look at some upsides. It's not 100% doom and gloom. I want to be fair and highlight. There's forced maturity. That the SpaceX IPO and public scrutiny that comes with it is the governance that I didn't account for in anything I said above. Not immediately, slowly, through the SEC, institutional investors, analysts, and short sellers, all poking at that 11% utilization on Colossus One and the financial losses incurred along the way. This might be a meaningful push to separate the AI and space divisions into their own brands again. The market might demand it. The system may do what the founder refused to, restructure the brand and protect the divisions from improperly intermingling financially. He's doing that constantly. In order to make a Tesla number, he sold a couple 100,000 Tesla Model X's or the Cybertrucks to one of his other companies. All right. Then there's the what happens if Grok just works and doesn't crash, and it can compete with the Chinese. My assumption in the above scenarios relies on Grok 4 being mediocre now, and a potential Blackwell-based Grok 5 still being mediocre, even after the hardware shift is 100% done. That could change. And if it does, all right, it's passable. There's a serious chance that DeepSeek and Gemini advancing were catalysts for the engineering team to rework the next one or modify this. They're constantly updating their newer versions of the models. And this is what, whoever's ahead of this is what ends up the winner, allegedly. All right, then they would have to adopt that lean, clean, scarcity-first approach and make every token gen count, earn its keep. I don't think it does. All right, this is, again, making an assumption. The third thing is diversification. There's a strong chance that the market will be fine even if SpaceX disappears tomorrow. Rocket Lab's Neutron, Blue Origin's New Glenn, Stoke Space, Relativity, the launch market is diversifying rapidly post-2020. The old monopolies now find themselves with smart, tenacious competition, and it's fierce. It requires more time to mature. Would NASA lose productivity in the meantime? Perhaps. But space travel and that yearning we've all had for time immaterial will be safe, and the through line continues. So again, you've got multiple space exploration rocket companies already out there competing with SpaceX. You've got multiple data center companies competing with SpaceX. You've got multiple social media companies competing with Twitter. I mean, look at how much Substack has eaten into Twitter's market share in the last year. So he says, we've got this perfect storm: stiff competition, financial house of cards, mentally unstable autocrat at the top, and a burgeoning aerospace company that does damn good work that we all need, married to a yet unproven, sometimes misconfigured AI server farm cloud compute network that took 85% of the oxygen out of the room and called itself SpaceX. I can't fix this. You can't fix this. None of us can fix this. The question that I think more than anything needs to be asked by all of us is quite simple. What the hell do we do with critical national infrastructure that's managed so badly? It's integrated into our culture, our government, our military. And without it, we're worse off, stagnant, or even regressing as a species. The Cold War refrain was government will build it and build it better. Star Wars, the Russian dead man switch, you name it. The 90s and 2000s brought us privatization is better because it's decentralized and gets more profits into the hands of more people. But that's just neoliberalism, and we know that that's a failed ideology. The 2020s answer, the one begging to be written by us, gasping to live, is we need a new model because both of these have serious issues that caused us problems before. So he says, I feel compelled to end this with a reminder that this is not an opinion about Musk. I'm far more interested in the implications of this deal rather than his personality. I am by no means a fan. I critique wealth in pretty much every post, but this runs much deeper. This is tyranny in place of a corporate board, and in the balance hangs the future of humanity. The thing that so many have written about, cried about, dreamed about, been terrified of, space exploration. It's a core part of our collective id, and we should probably handle it as the more meaningful interplay of conceptual, material, physical sciences that it is. It's a delicate thing. Treat it with respect. I guess, sure, again, it's not a space exploration company. Like he said, it's a data company that they happen to slap the name SpaceX on. And that is the biggest rub of all of this. Now, also remember that these frauds can be kept afloat for a long time. Because, are you paying close attention? On a counterpoint, Donald J. Trump stock is still not at zero, even though they have no earnings. They have negative earnings. They're losing $4 a share. That's been running for 2 years, and he's been able to leverage the net assets multiple times already. Will Musk try something similar? Will he leverage his ownership stake in all of this to go get something else? He's done it in the past. It's not a lady, it's a man. A man, it's Rich Slutsky. Does this man know that Elon Musk destroys his entire fleet of satellites every 3 years and won't recycle? Elon does horrible work for humanity. Yes, I know Rich does this. Yeah, where's Monarch to talk about decentralized Bitcoin? Right. Well, I'm sure he'll be around and he'll have plenty to say about this and be disappointed that he missed it live. It is the modern day space race, cookies. All right. First to AI dominance with quantum computing. And by the way, quantum computing is the reason that they're going to say it's going to break Bitcoin. That quantum algorithm. Space exploration is selling pipe dreams to morons who think we can colonize other worlds. Yeah. Space Zionists. Just what we need. Unbelievable. Thanks for sticking with me through that. I know that was a long one and it got technical. I warned you it was going to get technical, but and I've got a couple long pieces for the fuck Israel part, which we're going to get to. Again, that was what does he call this? Counterspin, lies, damn lies, and spin by Rich Slutsky over on Substack, and of course, I will link to this in the in my post with all the links from the show. Yeah, there's so much to that, and I knew it was going to take a while. The alphabet people need to stay out of our cereal. Maybe. They will get hired by the alphabet people, I agree. Or they'll go work at Boeing like you predicted. Cookies. Cookies knows what's up. All right. It's crazy. Again, I am, so the bottom line is as an investor, I'm not investing in this. I'm running the fuck away. I would short it, but I don't know how long before the stock actually tanks, because the market is weird with stuff like this. I mean, look, Nokia is still in existence as a company. When was the last time you saw a Nokia cell phone anywhere in the world? You know, because of the AMC nonsense. They're losing crazy money. They've still been around for years. I'm nervous to say short the stock, but I certainly would not invest. I would run in the other direction. There are way better companies to invest in than this. And I don't think that the speculation for most retail investors is worth it, or they have the time to wait for it to actually pay off. So, support independent media because we need it more than ever. I don't know too many places that will do a 1 hour deep dive and read an entire article like that, doing a technical breakdown of SpaceX and its fundamentals. I appreciate everyone on that list that supports us and gives me the freedom to do something like that. I think it's super important, and we can clip up parts of that will help people make it easier to understand. And there are really critical parts of that, like understanding that it's not an aerospace company or a rocket company, but an AI company and a data center company. The ways to, again, support INN are those people on that screen already have. I appreciate them. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. That's ko-fi.com. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Subscribe monthly at patreon.com/Indie News Network or at indiemediatoday.com over on Substack. We also publish to the network's INNnewsletter.com. And then we've got our website, IndieNewsNow.com, where you can get news 24/7, unfiltered, with no ads, and from over 100 different sources. You can pick up merch, and you can watch INN live, or you can tip the network when with a Stripe link and no fees. All right. I have got a ton of fuck Israel stuff because they're just the most awful people on the planet right now. They really, well, outside of Donald Trump and his administration as well. But I would say that Ben Gvir is even worse. He's coming out with the most genocidal, maniacal statements publicly with no consequences whatsoever. We're going to get to those later on. But we're going to start with a Caitlin Johnstone, Indie Media Award honoree. Caitlin Johnstone. I love her. This is a pretty short one. I'm going to let Tim read this one rather than you listening to me, because you heard me rant for the last hour, and I'll take a drink and a dab.
Israelis invaded Lebanon and then cried victim when their soldiers got killed, and other notes. In a move that surprised precisely 0 people, Israel once again bombed the shit out of Lebanon while Netanyahu continued to insist that the IDF will continue its extensive occupation of Lebanese territory. Israel's actions resulted in Tehran calling off scheduled peace talks with Washington, but now we're seeing reports that Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to another ceasefire. Israel pretty much never abides by its ceasefire agreements in Lebanon, but we'll see what happens, I guess. One major factor in this new development may have been Iran's threat to bomb Israel without warning if Trump doesn't pressure Netanyahu to end the war in Lebanon, which we learned about from a recent report by Dropsite News. President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have been creating viral content with tough talk about Israel's need to make peace and stop killing people in Lebanon. But all that matters in this instance is action. Either they're willing to exert the leverage they have over Israel to make sure this peace deal happens, or they're not. If Israel keeps sabotaging the agreement without suffering severe consequences from Washington, we may safely conclude that the Trump administration was all talk. And in case anyone's unclear, Trump will never deserve any credit for making peace with Iran, even if he does end up pushing Israel to comply with the deal. You don't get praise for starting an unprovoked war of aggression and then losing. That's not a thing. Zionists are screaming bloody murder about Hezbollah killing a tank crew of 4 Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon, with war propagandist Mark Levin taking to Twitter to say that Israel will hit back very hard and that no MOU or final agreement will change who these terrorists are, while Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir proclaims, "For every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn." From all this melodramatic garment-rending and victim LARPing, you'd assume the 4 Israelis were killed in their beds in Tel Aviv, not traveling by tank through a foreign country they'd invaded. As Ryan Grimm put it, "I have never heard of a country invading a neighbor and then calling it unfair that their soldiers died in that invasion. I don't think any other country ever even thought to make that complaint." Meanwhile, instead of attacking Trump for failing to do enough to make peace, Democrats are calling him a weak little bitch for not continuing the war and for agreeing to ensure $300 billion in reconstruction financing instead. Iran took Trump to the cleaners with this so-called understanding, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said on the Senate floor on Thursday, adding, "Are my colleagues on the other side of the aisle prepared to send Iran $300 billion when economic needs are so severe here at home? That's what Trump wants them to do." Senator Amy Klobuchar tweeted, "With $300 billion, we could end homelessness, fund cancer research for 40 years, and give every child free pre-K for over 7 years. Instead, Trump is sending it to Iran." Senator Chris Murphy said, "Here's what this deal basically is. Iran makes zero concessions, and the United States lets Iran trade oil for free and commits to giving them $300 billion in reparations." Senator Adam Schiff said, "Trump is touting a deal that promises to lift all sanctions, allow Iran to export oil and potentially charge tolls, and hand over more than $300 billion to that country," adding the deal looks more like a surrender. These prominent Democrats make it sound like Trump is just taking $300 billion from the American taxpayer, when according to Reuters, the financing for the deal, quote, "will be comprised entirely of private sector funds." Democrats are essentially running the same bogus Obama gave Iran pallets of cash attack that Republicans used when slamming the 2015 JCPOA. More importantly, how revealing is it that these warmongering freaks are suddenly pretending to care about how much $300 billion could do to help ordinary Americans? Whenever anyone tries to nudge the party an inch to the left on universal health care or whatever, you see Democratic Party officials wagging their fingers at them, telling them there's no money for such pie-in-the-sky fantasies. But as soon as they get an opportunity to push for more war, they're out there saying they could use all that peace money to end homelessness. All of which will, of course, be right out the window when it comes time to vote for the next $1.5 trillion military budget. Democrats are such obnoxious liars. Their sleaziness is exceeded only by the Trump supporters claiming their president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for losing a war he started. Anyway, things are a mess. We'll see how this all plays out.
I love those two. I really do. Shout out to Caitlin Johnstone and her husband, Tim Foley, who did the reading there. All right. All this is in text with receipts and links to everything that she's talking about cited. Zionists screaming bloody murder about Hezbollah killing the tank crew. That's real. We're going to do, I don't even want to talk about that. I want to get to the Bet Beat article later. I want to move this toward the end of the segment. I want to get more into some of the monstrosity that Iran, that Israel is up to, and about this stuff about peace talks. Now, they were in Switzerland to have actual peace talks again, and Trump has to open his mouth. Then there's all kinds of, and J.D. Vance is there, and you got Kushner and Witkoff are there. I listen to what the Iranians are saying because there's a lot of bluster and bullshit coming out of D.C., but you need Iran to come to the table and sign something. So until they're saying something, I'm not really listening. Yes, Israel and peace talks are polar opposite because Israel does not want to be at the table, doesn't acknowledge and doesn't support or approve of this. They're continuing to bomb Lebanon all along. And that is condition one of the memorandum of understanding that was signed, is that we have to get Israel to stop bombing Lebanon and everywhere else. So Iran says that Switzerland talks with the U.S. focus on ending the war, easing sanctions, and releasing frozen assets. That's that $300 billion, like Caitlin talked about, and Tim. Iran's foreign ministry said Sunday that talks in Switzerland are focused on implementing key provisions of that June 18th MOU with the U.S., including ending the war, easing sanctions, and releasing frozen Iranian assets. Again, this is the Turkish agency, Anadolu Agency, AA. Iran is determined to pursue the implementation of the other side's commitments with precision and seriousness. They want to hold us accountable. What happened? I saw chat disconnected. How? Why? Weird. He said the Switzerland meeting was convened to follow up on the implementation of the memorandum ending the war, adding that Article 13 makes the start of negotiations on a final agreement conditional of the implementation of Articles 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11. What are those? Article 1 particularly, which concerns ending the war on all fronts, including Lebanon. If they don't do that, it is not possible to enter the stage of negotiations for a final agreement. Basically, this is how the Trump administration is setting up to torpedo the deal by claiming that, well, we can't get Israel to abide and to stop bombing Lebanon, so we are going to have to torpedo this deal, tear it up, and write a new deal. Since March 2nd, Israel has carried out attacks in Lebanon, killing over 4,100 people and injuring another 12,500 others, displacing more than 1 million people. I will say it every week. We need to come up with a better word than displacing for destroying everything you ever owned, the home you live in, and you now are homeless and you've lost for the most part, all your material wealth on top of it. And you basically have whatever you could keep on your back and carry. That's beyond frightening. And more than 1 million people. Can you imagine more than 1 million Americans bombed out of their homes with nowhere to go, sleeping in tents in the street, begging for anything they can get their hands on because they have no money, they have no stuff, they have nothing to trade. They could offer labor, but nobody's hiring. According to the negotiator, Sunday's discussions focused on implementing these provisions, especially Article 1. First round of 4-party talks involving Iran and the U.S., with mediation by Qatar and Pakistan, concluded in Switzerland Sunday. Again, Israel's not even at the table. Unless Israel's at the table and agreeing to it themselves, disgracing. But I wouldn't describe that as yes, it is disgracing, but the people that it's happening to, I wouldn't call that. I mean, but it's so much, displaced is such a fair, like a clinical, sanitized word. Yeah, and that's the problem. I can't imagine how horrible it would be. All right, it's too terrifying for us to imagine. It's the privilege afforded to us as a goober American, temporarily, man. Till the drones come and start bombing our fucking houses, we all are Gaza at some point. It will happen. Especially the people that talk shit and are dissident journalists and are loudly speaking out against what's happening right now, from ICE to Israel to Ukraine to everywhere. I'm worried. I really am. I'm not even going to talk about the sentencing for the people in the Prairie Land 16, that happened today. And the dude that transported magazines got 30 years in prison. Just a reminder for anybody who forgot or anybody who wants to ignore it, Israel is still committing genocide in Gaza. And I'll say it over and over and over again. Now, I brought 3 anti-war articles because they're some of my favorite people on this planet, and they're all Indie Media Award honorees. Dave DeCamp. Okay, the first one is from Dave. Israel has killed more than 1,000 Palestinians in Gaza since the so-called ceasefire deal was signed in October of 2025. I don't even think that I need to show more than a headline here. All right, but I will. The health ministry had said, this was again on the 17th, so it's a Saturday, okay, that over the previous 24 hours, Israeli attacks had killed 2 more Palestinians in Gaza, and 6 more who succumbed to their wounds from previous strikes were added to the death toll. And that's what got them to over 1,000, more than 1,000 now, since they agreed to ceasefire, quote unquote. Okay, meaning that Hamas ceases and Israel fires. That's what a ceasefire is. Another 3,157 have been wounded in the time, meaning that there have been more than 4,000 Palestinian casualties in that 8-month period. And I think that there's probably even more than that. I think that's an undercount. Again, you still have over 1 million people there. You're telling me there's only 4,000 casualties? That seems hard to believe in tiny confined spaces where they've now penned everybody in as they continue to move the line closer and closer to the water. Israel attacks continued in Gaza Wednesday, with witnesses telling AA that an Israeli strike hit beachgoers in the Al-Masawi tent camp in southern Gaza. Again, at least 2 Palestinians killed there, 6 wounded. Every day, X number of killed, X number of wounded. Follow Middle East Monitor, follow anti-war, and you'll hear about the things that they don't want to tell you about on corporate media. Right. Steve Gill, 14 kids murdered a day in Lebanon alone. I'm going to get to Lebanon. That's since March 2nd, since they started bombing Lebanon. All right. In recent days, Palestinians reported IDF troops advancing that yellow line, like I said. All right. And several families were reportedly displaced in Gaza City Saturday on Tuesday as Israeli troops pushed tanks into that area. Again, by the way, nobody is left in their original home. They were all displaced and already living in tents. Now they have to move again. Fuck Israel. All right. So the U.S. and Israeli officials have accused Hamas of violating the ceasefire deal by not laying down its weapons. But the agreement that was actually signed didn't commit Hamas to disarmament. The two sides agreed to a U.S. proposal that called for the demilitarization of Gaza as a framework for negotiations, but the issue of disarmament was meant to be worked out in follow-up negotiations, but Israel keeps killing the negotiators. Hamas has also maintained that it won't disarm unless there is movement toward the establishment of a Palestinian state, which we know Israel will never allow to happen. Negotiations on implementing the U.S. plan for Gaza have been ongoing, not with people from Hamas. Not to our understanding. That has never been announced. No sign of progress. That's right. So that's the first DeCamp article. I got another one here. God damn. This guy, and allegedly he's coming to New York, and we're all going to wait and see whether Zoran is actually going to step up and do what he said he's going to do. But of course, we know he's not going to. He's not going to arrest Ben Gvir, who's coming here for a UN conference on policing, believe it or not. It's unbelievable. Ben Gvir says Israel cannot stop destroying houses in southern Lebanon. Oh, they just can't. They can't help themselves. No, more like they shouldn't and aren't going to. He also said that they cannot allow the residents of southern Lebanon to return. So permanent displacement now. We're stealing your home. We're stealing your land. Fuck you. No restitution. And you're on your own. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is a war criminal, said on Wednesday that Israel cannot stop destroying homes in southern Lebanon, despite the U.S.-Iran memorandum of understanding that calls for an end to Israel's war on the country. Quote, Israel cannot stop the demolition of houses in southern Lebanon. We simply cannot stop. That's all. All right. And AA was citing him speaking on the Knesset's broadcast channel. We cannot allow the residents of southern Lebanon to return because if they find out what we've done, they'll show the rest of the world. We must continue to control the territory, even if we disagree with Trump. We are an independent state that invaded an independent state with our weapons. Fuck you. Iranian officials have made clear that they will insist on a real ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon as part of their deal with the U.S., though Ben-Gvir and other senior Israeli officials, including Benjamin Netanyahu himself, have vowed that Israel will not pull out of the country. So there's no deal. Israeli attacks continued in Lebanon on Wednesday, despite the U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding, and at least 2 people were killed. The war could unravel the potential U.S.-Iran deal, as Iran's military is warning of a harsh response if Israel continues its attacks in Lebanon. Any day now, boys. Gvir is more explicit about Israel's designs for Lebanon, as he said last month that Israel has a settlement plan for southern Lebanon, while Netanyahu and IDF Minister Israel Katz framed their desire for an indefinite occupation of the territory the IDF has seized in the country as necessary for security purposes. Insane. These people are insane. They should all be in prison and they should be hanged. Every single one of them. They are war criminals. They have ordered the murder of innocent children. They should be hanged. Israeli media reports that Ben Gvir, leader of the Jewish Power Party, suggested at a recent cabinet meeting that the IDF should kidnap women and children in Lebanon as a way to pressure Hezbollah. Who are the terrorists again? Right. Israel. Fuck Israel. Yep, even if they did strike a deal, Israel wasn't going to stick to it. Because Israel's not even at the table. Here's the third anti-war article. And this gets back to what Steve was saying earlier. Lebanon death toll passes 4,000 as Israel is continuing its airstrikes. This one's by Jason Ditz. And this one was 2 days ago on Sunday the 21st. Despite yet another ceasefire implemented on Friday, the death toll from Israeli attacks across Lebanon this weekend were substantially higher than normal, with around 100 killed over the course of 3 days, and the attacks showing no sign of slowing. And nobody's doing anything to stop them. Nobody's stopping sending them weapons. Nobody's threatening to stop the flow of money. Nobody's threatening to put on sanctions. Nobody's threatening to bomb them as a country. That's when things are going to start to change. Until one of those 4 things starts happening, they're going to keep doing this with impunity. The surge in killings has brought Lebanon to another stark milestone, with over 4,000 people now having been killed since Israel's invasion in early March, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry, which put the toll at over 4,000 killed and over 12,000 others wounded. It's so crazy how corporate media just won't talk about Israel invading, but they're constantly talking about how Russia invaded Ukraine. Even though that was at the request of the areas in the Donbass, nobody requested Israel invaded here, but they did anyway. All right. The strikes reported early Sunday included 5 people killed in Bekaa Valley, including a child, and 2 Palestinians killed near the city of Tyre. The IDF claimed to have not been aware of such strikes being conducted overnight, but officials reiterated that troops have freedom of action, so they don't even know what they're up to. They're just ordering them to indiscriminately murder people. And they're absolving them of any war crimes from doing so. The reports of Friday evening's ceasefire were enough that some displaced Lebanese tried to return to their homes in Tyre and in Nabateh districts. The reports suggested that the destruction was so substantial and the attacks have continued, so many of them turned around and left again. Well, what were they staying for? To be killed? To stay in empty shells of houses that don't have anything that's salvageable? U.S. officials were pushing for another round of Israel-Lebanon talks, which will begin next week. Hezbollah has expressed opposition to such talks, arguing that they only serve Israeli interests. Right. It's just a stall tactic. Indeed, since those talks have resulted in several ceasefires in recent weeks, none of them have actually ceased any fire. It arguably isn't serving anyone's interests at all. Israel is persistently going into the talks, which Hezbollah are excluded from, with the underlying assumption that Hezbollah is to blame for whatever happens and that no matter what's agreed to, IDF troops will continue to occupy Lebanon and will continue to be free to attack Hezbollah. This has led to agreements, again, without Hezbollah, that Hezbollah will stop resisting, and in return, Israel will keep attacking. Unsurprisingly, this has become consistently unsuccessful. Yeah, why are you punching yourself? Why are you punching yourself? This is the most insane shit. I mean, the rhetoric is so stupid around all of this. All right. Last year, I did a story on How Do We Miss That with Reef about Ali Abu Nima from the Electronic Intifada. Also, both Indie Media Award honorees. All right. He was arrested and detained for an entire weekend, put in jail because he showed up in Switzerland to speak at a conference about Palestine. And as it turned out, like, their security chief was a Zionist who literally had Israel ties, and we found that out later. Here it is a year later, and he's been invited back to this conference, and he wanted to write a short article, Why I'm Returning to Switzerland After My Unlawful Detention. And so there's Ali, all right, in Zurich of 2025. I'm returning to Switzerland next week to participate in hearings related to criminal complaints I filed in connection with my unlawful detention in Zurich in January 2025. In February of this year, Switzerland's Federal Administrative Court ruled that the January 2025 entry ban and expulsion order against me were issued despite there being no evidence that my speech violated Swiss law or that I posed any threat to Switzerland. The court found serious violations of my procedural rights, ordered Fedpol, the Swiss National Police Agency, to make a substantial contribution to my legal costs, and refunded my court fees. I can now also confirm that in March and April, Fedpol issued decisions finding that I didn't constitute a threat to the internal or external security of Switzerland when I last came to the country, thus rendering the entry ban and expulsion decisions of January 2025 unlawful. Hopefully somebody goes to jail over that. Fedpol had previously assessed that the opinions I expressed do not attack democratic values or the rule of law and fall within the scope of the right to free speech under the Swiss Constitution. A Swiss parliamentary investigation previously found evidence that the entry ban and expulsion order were issued following improper political influence by Nicoletta Del Valle, the top federal law enforcement official at the time. Del Valle has close ties to Israel and has expressed outspoken pro-Israel opinions. I've separately filed a criminal complaint against her, which is still pending. Good. The federal court victory followed a December 2025 ruling by the Zurich Administrative Court, which confirmed that my arrest and detention violated the Swiss Constitution and the European Convention on Human Rights. Together, these unlawful actions prevented me from participating in public events organized by Swiss citizens and residents to discuss Israel's genocide in Gaza. They amounted to a severe form of official censorship. They violated my human rights and, in my view, the constitutional rights of Swiss citizens to freedom of assembly and to receive information. Next week's hearings relate to criminal complaints concerning individual conduct. They are legally distinct from the administrative proceedings that successfully challenged and overturned unlawful government actions. Pursuant to Article 204 of the Swiss Code of Criminal Procedure, I requested and received a letter of safe passage from the prosecutor guaranteeing that I will not be arrested or subject to restrictions on my liberty while I'm in Switzerland for the hearings. You better have gotten that guarantee. I think you can wipe your ass with that guarantee until it actually happens. In addition, my lawyers obtained written confirmation from Swiss federal authorities that there are no restrictions on my entry into the country. That's great. It's all good stuff. I expect Swiss authorities to fully respect my rights and to adhere strictly to the rule of law, My legal team stands ready to take all necessary steps in the event of any violation. I believe my unlawful detention last January was intended to punish and silence me for speaking out and to discourage others from doing so. My legal action seeks to ensure transparency and deter similar abuses against anyone in the future. During my time in Switzerland, I look forward to participating in a teach-in hosted by Watermelon University on June 23rd, an event originally planned for last January. My pursuit of accountability and defense of free speech is being made possible by crowd-funded public support. Sounds familiar. I'm deeply grateful to each and every person who's contributed and spoken out, which is awesome. Oh, the Swiss have absolutely been censoring folk, and they were doing it on behalf of Israel. All of this, every bit of censorship is on behalf of silencing critics of Israel or blunting the monstrosity of Israeli behavior. That's the only thing that's being censored right now. For a while it was COVID, then it was Ukraine, now it's just Israel, genocide, and what they're doing in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, in the West Bank. Holy shit, what they're doing in the West Bank, nobody wants to talk about. It's all coming, and it's all here. Now, the one other graphic I had before I want to read the BetBeat article that is somewhat long. All right, this is a graphic I found on Facebook that was talking about born unequal in the West Bank, showcasing what an Israeli man, an Israeli young man has to go through versus a Palestinian young woman, and the inequality that they experience. So, the young man, Elon, a Jewish citizen of Israel, born in an Israeli settlement, is on the right, is on the left. He's with the blue. So I'll read out what it says. He's a Jewish citizen of Israel, born in an Israeli settlement. Can I hop in my car and drive to Jerusalem? Well, yes. You can do so on roads designed to bypass Palestinian communities and to facilitate your commute. Now, Miriam is a Palestinian ID holder, born in a Palestinian village in Area C. She cannot hop in her car and drive to Jerusalem. You need a rarely issued Israeli permit that's generally time limited. Even with a permit, you'll face checkpoints where you're likely to experience delays and humiliation. If I'm arrested, will I get a fair trial? Well, the Jewish male, of course, the Jewish citizen of Israel, yes. You'll be tried in Israeli courts, civil courts with full due process rights. So, of course, we know what happens to Miriam, and that you'll be tried in an Israeli military court with near 100% conviction rate, or possibly even held in administrative detention without trial or charge based on secret evidence indefinitely. Then we have, do I have the right to free speech and the right to protest? And, of course, the male Jewish Israeli citizen, born in an Israeli settlement, yes. Only speech with near certainty to seriously jeopardize vital security can be restricted. You can protest without fear of state repression. Of course, in the West Bank, Miriam doesn't have that right. Military orders restrict your right to free speech and the right to protest. If you violate these vaguely worded orders, you could face up to 10 years in prison. That includes a Palestinian flag, by the way. Palestinian flags are banned in all of Palestine. Can I build a home? The Jewish settler born in an Israeli settlement? Yes. Israel has allocated large swaths of the West Bank to settlements where plans have been approved to build thousands of homes. Now in Lebanon, too. Of course, we know that Miriam could not, because you live in the 60% of the West Bank that is under exclusive Israeli control, Area C, it's virtually impossible. You may be more likely to have your home demolished than get a permit to build. But they treat Palestinians like equal. There are Palestinian citizens that go along. No, they still don't have full voting rights. No. So acknowledging that is important, because most Zionist Jews don't even really acknowledge that there is an entire second class of citizenship, or not even citizenship, and that, oh yeah, she also doesn't have the right to leave. Ever. No passports. Not without some kind of a special permit and a sponsor and a whole lot of other things coming together first. Yes, KYE, so fucked up. Totally agree. Okay, now, here is the BetBeat article that I wanted to read earlier. But I did want to get through all that craziness first. Here's the BetBeat piece. And I think it's really important. He says, no, it's not the Jews. As a anti-Zionist Jew, this hit with me because they've been very critical of Jews not speaking out enough against Israel, and not enough of us. Systems of power built the Dutch, the British, and now the American Empire. White supremacy and Zionism are the ideologies forged to sanctify their conquest. Not the whites, not the Jews. Empire. And that's what he's going to talk about here. Empire and white supremacy. Okay. He says, disclaimer, if you're the kind of reader who fires off a comment after the headline, the objection forming in your mind, but they call themselves Jews, is answered below. Read first, vent second, or don't vent at all. So let me blow this up. The children buried beneath collapsed apartment blocks in Rafah. The mothers shot through the chest while clutching white flags in Khan Yunis. The doctors bound and executed in the courtyards of Al-Shifa. The journalists incinerated in their press vests. The infants left to rot in the maternity wards after Israeli soldiers ordered the staff out at gunpoint. The starved boys, with their ribs jutting through their skin like the bowed staves of broken instruments. All of them are the harvest of empire. They are not the harvest of a people. They are the harvest of a system. And the system has a name. And the name is not the Jews. For 2 years, I've watched a sickness drift into the discourse of the anti-imperialist sphere. A sickness as old as the pogroms of the Pale and as recent as the Islamophobia of the War on Terror. It is the seductive whisper that says the slaughter in Gaza is the work of some occult Hebraic power, that Congress kneels before AIPAC because of the cunning of a tribe, a race even, rather than the obvious and savage logic of military Keynesianism and American hegemony in Levant. That the genocide unfolding before our eyes is a Jewish project rather than an imperial one. Here's the lie. The whisper is a lie. Yes, Israel calls itself the Jewish state. Yes, its ministers cite the Torah as the warplanes lift off. This is the oldest trick of empire, to recruit a people to wear its uniform and to conscript a god to bless its wars. The popes loosed the crusaders on Jerusalem in the name of Christ. The Spanish gutted Tenochtitlan for the cross. I fumbled on that one. The British starved Bengal in the name of a Christian crown. America has draped itself in liberty while burning villages from Vietnam to Yemen. To mistake the banner for the army is to surrender the analysis before the argument begins. It's a lie that lets the architects of empire slip into the shadows. The arms manufacturers in Bethesda and Haifa, the technocrats in Foggy Bottom, the war criminals in the White House, the senators who weep crocodile tears in committee hearings and then sign the next appropriation. It's a lie that drags the Jewish girl who refused her conscription papers and went to military prison rather than serve in Gaza into the dock alongside the men who built the bombs. Every empire requires an ideology of legitimation. The Belgian who served the hands of the Congolese children did not, the Belgian who severed the hands of the Congolese children didn't believe that he was a murderer. He believed he was carrying the light of into a dark continent. The British officer who gave the order at Jallianwala Bagh did not believe he was a butcher. He believed in the white man's burden. The Dutch Gvir, who built his fortune on the bones of the Banda Islanders, believed he was an instrument of a Calvinist god. The French paratrooper who attached the electrodes to the genitals of Jamila Boupacha in Algeria believed he was defending civilization against barbarism. They all get spun the same lie. By the way, Jamila Boupacha is a former resistance member of the Algerian National Liberation Front. She was arrested in 1960 for attempting to bomb a cafe in Algiers. Her confession, which was purportedly obtained by means of rape and torture, and her subsequent trial affected French public opinion about the methods used by the French army in Algeria. Little history lesson for those who didn't know who she was. Today, the Israeli soldier who raises a refugee camp in Jenin believes he is the inheritor of a covenant, the avenger of Auschwitz, the redeemer of a wounded people. Zionism gives him this story. Zionism, the most successful settler colonial ideology of the 20th century, is what allows the bulldozer driver to grind a sleeping family into the dirt and rise the next morning to kiss his children before school. Zionism is the paint. The steel beneath was forged long ago in Amsterdam and Antwerp, in London and Lisbon, and is now hammered into shape in Washington. The steel consumes Yemenis and Iraqis and Afghans and Sudanese with the same indifference it consumes Palestinians. The steel doesn't care whether the men working its levers wear a kippah, a cross, a turban, or a flag pin on a lapel. It only cares that the levers keep moving. So to say it is the Jews is to erase the men and women who have devoted their lives to tearing down the lie. It's to erase Avi Schleim, who spent his life bearing witness against the crimes committed in his name. Or Ilan Pappé, who dismantled the founding of myths of Israel from within the academy. It's to erase the rabbis of Jewish Voice for Peace, who chain themselves to the doors of Senate offices and weep on the floors of Grand Central Station. It's to erase the Israeli refuseniks rotting in prison 6 rather than fire a shell into a kindergarten. It's to erase Hannah Arendt and Martin Buber and Albert Einstein, who wrote to the New York Times in 1948 to warn the world that the men founding the new state were the descendants of Mussolini, fascists in Hebrew dress. Now, there's a tough question. Are Jews doing enough? There are legitimate questions, and they must be asked. Have enough Jews risen against the slaughter? Have the synagogues that drape themselves in Israeli flags been called to account by their own congregants? No. Has the dissent been loud enough to drown out the cantors of Greater Israel? Sadly, no. These are the conversations Muslims were forced to have in the rubble years after September 11th, when the crimes of 19 hijackers were laid at the feet of every imam in Brooklyn and every veiled girl in an Amsterdam schoolyard, when whole neighborhoods were made to apologize for atrocities they had no hand in committing. The extremism that hijacked Islam was the bastard child of empire, midwifed in the madrasas that the CIA bankrolled to bleed the Soviets in the Hindu Kush. The extremism that has hijacked Judaism is no different in pedigree. Wahhabism colonized Islam in the service of the Saudi monarchy and its American patron. Zionism colonized Judaism in the service of the same patron and the same project. Both are parasites. Both grew fat on the host. Neither is the host. What we owe the Palestinians is more than the slogans we chant in the streets. We owe them precision. To name, quote unquote, the Jews is to surrender the analysis. It's the answer demanded by mobs and by tyrants. It's the answer that ends with broken windows in Kishinev, burning houses in Ireland, and cattle cars to Treblinka. I believe that the Palestinians do not need that answer. I believe they need us to be clear-eyed about who is killing them and why and how the killing is financed and armed and laundered through the chambers of a Congress that fears nothing so much as it fears losing its donors, Christian and Jewish alike. The America First movement makes you fail to learn the lesson. A new movement is gathering force, and it offers a counterfeit of the very analysis I'm pleading for. The America First right has turned against Israel, speaking of dual loyalties, foreign influence, and a country bled dry for a Mediterranean garrison. In their telling, America is a virgin corrupted, a republic of yeoman farmers seduced by a foreign vampire. Sever the cord, banish the parasite, and America returns to its white innocence. This is a fairy tale. The United States was an empire before there was an Israel. Before Herzl scribbled his pamphlets in a Paris cafe. America had already drowned the Sioux at Wounded Knee, annexed half of Mexico at the point of a bayonet, overthrown the Hawaiian Queen, and killed perhaps 1 million Filipinos in the jungles of Luzon. The Trail of Tears is older than AIPAC. The slave ship is older than the kibbutz. The America First movement does not want to dismantle empire. It wants to relocate its loyalties, to bring the legions home. Not because the legions are wrong, but because the legions are believed to serve the wrong masters. It's the story of the innocent peasant and the wicked moneylender, the wholesome nation and the alien parasite. Tucker Carlson comes to mind. Marjorie Taylor Greene comes to mind. Thomas Massey comes to mind. Matt Gaetz comes to mind. Nice booby Lauren Boebert comes to mind. Sorry, bad cookies. To pretend the cancer entered the body in 1948 is to misread the diagnosis so thoroughly that the cure becomes impossible. Empire is not an accident that befell America. Empire is the architecture of America. Any critique of Israel that begins by absolving America is a critique that ends by deepening the very machine it claims to oppose. Then we get to Palestine. The Palestinians are suffering to a degree that defies comprehension. A generation of children buried. A prison complex that is a laboratory of cruelty and depravity unseen since the French systematically raped Algerian women, girls, boys, and men. Hospitals turned into ossuaries. A whole people reduced in the calculus of empire to a demographic problem to be managed by white phosphorus and engineered hunger. If we love them, we owe them the truth. The truth is that empire is killing them. Empire has always killed them. Empire wears different masks in different centuries. Today, the mask is Zionism. Yesterday, it was manifest destiny. Tomorrow, it will fashion a new face from whatever scripture, whatever myth, whatever wounded history is available to be looted. My guess it will be technocracy. Our task is to tear the mask away and look at the face beneath. And the face beneath is not Jewish. The face beneath is not Christian. The face beneath belongs to no people and no God. It belongs to power. It's Lord of the Rings. It's the ring. It's Schmeagol. It has always belonged to power. And until we name it correctly, we will keep burying the children it devours. That's poetic, man. That's Kareem from BetBeat. And that moved me a lot. Again, because, and it's not absolving anything that I'm doing, but it's at least acknowledging that again, not all Jews, not the Jews, that is lazy analysis, that is what we used to call anti-Semitic, but they've completely watered down and made that word meaningless. Okay, but it is anti-human to say that it's just one specific group. Again, it's the way that post 9/11, it was the Muslims, people, and that's what you had. A lot of the Bush fans, a lot of the, the Southern redneck stereotype. We're going to get those Muslims, that it's very similar rabid rhetoric type of things. Right. And before Manifest Destiny, as KYE says, it was divine right. Right. And if you say fuck FIFA, there you go. Fuck Israel, fuck America. There's FIFA. And fuck FIFA too, by the way. We talked about FIFA last week in the World Cup, and there were all kinds of nonsense happening there too. And the Iranian team was gracious, and America, quote unquote, fell in love with the Iranian team. And that was a whole, again, I don't want to talk about soccer in the World Cup, and it's a distraction from this, okay, to not talk about this, and a flashpoint to have the imperialist Iranians come out and say that the Iranian team that represented the country in the World Cup was representing the regime and not representing their Iran, the Persian Iran. Another reason to come out and divide people. And yes, it brought people together. And I know Messi scored a goal and a couple of goals and broke a record, and Ronaldo broke a record. He scored another thing, and very nice for all of you who enjoy soccer and enjoy the World Cup. Good for you. I'm having a hard time focusing on that or enjoying it at all, and I'm not sorry for that. And I'm not going to stop talking about it. But all right, I know that was a long segment too. I warned you that fuck Israel was going to be long, but I really think that was a really important article from Kareem at BetBeat. Okay, Natalie, if we all die of thirst, who are the data centers going to work for then? That's a great question. Well, the truth is that they've been talking about a depopulation agenda for how many years, decades now? The Georgia Guidestones talked about 500 billion people in the world. That means getting rid of about 8 billion people somehow. So maybe they're going to drought us all out. Maybe they're going to starve us out. KYE, that's right. Oracle just laid off 25,000 people after all the money that they spent to give David Ellison money for Skydance, and all the money that they made with their stock going up 5-fold in the last few years, thanks to all the data center stuff. All right. Yes, Shane, thank you. It is a great article. I agree. Good to see you across the down under. Yep, they're all controlled opposition. Totally agree. Right, Dabby Dabs, good to see you. Yes, I know you know who Bobert is, but I know that you also still like her boobies. Sorry, cookies. Oh, good, my brother. All right, I still have an Alan McLeod article, a lightning round, and the GoFundMe's. All right. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Ways to do that: Cash App, $, Indie News Network, code-v.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, monthly at patreon.com/Indie News Network, and over at Indie Media Today and INNnewsletter.com. IndieMediaToday.com is my Substack. We're live there now. INNnewsletter.com is the network Substack. And then the name of the show is Indie News Now Live because a lot of these articles, like this BetBeat article, you can link to it directly from IndieNewsNow.com. If you don't want to wait for me to put the description out, you can find that. And all of BetBeat's articles, by the way, are on an RSS feed there. All right, so let me get to the Alan McLeod piece. Alan McLeod is one of my favorite journalists. I would say he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If there was, I know the Native American connotation, imperialist thing, Mount Rushmore, but if there were a Mount Rushmore, I would put him up in the top journalists on Mount Rushmore right now of independence. All right, alongside Whitney Webb, alongside probably John McAvoy from Declassified UK, right? If we're talking alive or dead, then I might have to put John Pilger up there. Alive, there's a lot of question as to who that fourth one could be. I would not say that it would be Noam Chomsky or who's the other, Cy Hirsch. I would not say it would be him, though a lot of people would. Anyway, I do, again, want to get to this Alan McLeod article. So Alan published this article based on FARA documents that Israel is spying on millions of Christian Americans in their churches. And this could have been added to the Fuck Israel segment, but that one was so long. And this one, it's a little bit longer and deserved its own kind of section. So, if you are a Christian living in the Western United States, you have almost certainly been targeted with pro-Israel, anti-Palestine propaganda paid for directly by the government of Benjamin Netanyahu and financed by the U.S. government. Your search's location and internet activity is being monitored by Israel, and your algorithms and search results across multiple platforms are being manipulated by Israeli government in what its American partner calls, quote, the largest geofencing and targeted Christian digital campaign ever. Let me guess if this is Brad Parscale and Clock Tower X doing this on behalf of Havas Media, which is the propaganda arm for Hasbara. Amid a massive drop in support from the Christian community, Israel is spending millions of dollars to target individuals entering churches or Christian colleges with ads and paying pastors across the country to promote propaganda and false anti-Palestinian narratives every Sunday. Documents filled with the United States Foreign Agents Registry Act show. So they got a FARA filing. The 86-page disclosure reveals that Israel is recruiting Hollywood celebrities and sports stars to promote the country while also manipulating Christians' social media feeds. And they're doing it by spying on you through your phone. Mint Press explores this explosive story ignored in corporate media. In September, Show Faith Works LLC, a San Diego-based company led by conservative activist Chad Schnitker, filed a sworn document with the U.S. Department of Justice. The declaration revealed that the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs was paying Show Faith by Works $4.1 million to carry out a massive, covert digital surveillance operation targeting Christian communities across multiple states, including California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. Other than California, what's really interesting is that there's a minuscule Jewish population among all of those areas. The document noted that all students at every Christian college and every congregant at every major church in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado has been spied on through their phone's location data and targeted with propaganda extolling Israel's moral superiority and linking the Palestinian population with extremist factions. The campaign estimates that it has reached well over 8 million Americans. Show Faith by Works itself divides its messaging into two themes, pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. Its primary goals, in its own words, are to combat low American evangelical Christian approval of the nation of Israel by using biblical arguments to highlight the importance of Israel and the Jewish people to Christians. It also wishes to, quote unquote, educate Christians on the historical importance of Israel and its significance in the region, as if Christians didn't know about Bethlehem, and to counter new and evolving pro-Palestinian messaging as the global narrative shifts. Evolving pro-Palestinian messaging. Yeah, okay. Many of their anti-Palestinian talking points are highly controversial, dubious, or even blatant falsehoods. Their principal messaging on Palestine is that there never was or should be a Palestinian state in history, and that Palestinians shelter terrorists and hide their weapons in their schools and hospitals, and that they are not a trustworthy actor, as the Palestinians' goals are genocidal. Every single statement made there is being done by Israel right now. Although there actually is a settler colonial state in history right now, Israelis certainly shelter terrorists. They certainly hide weapons in their schools and hospitals, and they are not a trustworthy actor. And their goals are absolutely genocidal, and they'll tell you so. Just ask them. They also share ads and messages with American Christians claiming that Gazans kill U.S. Christian aid workers distributing food to them. I can't stand using the word Gazans. They're Palestinians that were forced into Gaza. They lived in plenty other places besides Gaza. And that Israel is the birthplace of Jesus. In fact, Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem in the Palestinian West Bank. But of course, they claim that the West Bank is Judea and Samaria and part of Israel, so therefore they do mental gymnastics into justifying that in their own heads. The overall message then is one extolling Israel's supposed virtues, encouraging Americans to visit while dehumanizing Palestinians, including the 12.5% of historic Palestine who were Christians themselves, as genocidal terrorists intent on destroying the world. Pizza Balla. I mean, we covered the Cardinal and how Israel destroyed all the churches in Gaza, that there were multiple churches there, and Israel blew them all up. Show Faith Works projects that this content will receive 47 million impressions across the United States in its first 12 months in operation. A Hasbara operation. All right. How are they doing this? Geofencing creates invisible digital boundaries around real-world locations. Google started doing this with AdWords years ago. So if you wanted to target your competitor's location and the 2 miles around, you could serve an ad to them that popped up when they drove within a certain distance of that location that would steer them to yours instead. When I was working in the car business, people offered this technology to us at a dealership to try to steal away customers from competing dealerships. Any phone or smart device entering a church on Sunday or a colleague during term time is logged and recorded. Also, by the way, the TPUSA Memorial, the whole thing that they held for Charlie Kirk, that was the largest geofencing event in the history of the United States that also happened in September 2025 when they contracted these guys. I wonder if there's a correlation. I'm just speculating. I don't know. I'm just saying. Sounding like Trump now. The operation then begins sending targeted advertisements and messaging to each device through ad networks promoting Israel and demonizing Palestine. Now, they do this on social media. They do it through text messaging because they now have your phone number, and they do it through Google AdWords. So these are ads that follow you from website to website to website. These messages appear in Google searches, on social media, and on any number of apps and platforms, as I just said. Your behavioral data, how you respond to the ads, what you click, or how long you watch for, is then fed back into their operation in order to tailor their messaging to each individual, making future targeting even more effective. Over time, the system builds up an enormous amount of data on each individual, their locations, beliefs, preferences, and actions in order to better manipulate them. Also, the sites they visit, the news they consume, the videos they watch. Once you enter a church or college targeted by Israel, there's almost nothing you can do about it. They're paying to manipulate your search results, news feeds, and algorithms. What you see online will be decided by Israel, not by you. And virtually none of the millions of people affected are aware that this is happening. Now, I know Reef and Colin have talked about this on INN News before, and I know the guys, I think at ProPill did too. Is your pastor a secret Israeli agent? The operation admits that it has digitally targeted every large church in 4 Western states. 219 in California, 39 in Arizona, 32 in Colorado, 14 in Nevada. Some of these mega churches boast congregations of up to 45,000 people alone, helping reach an estimated 3.9 million individuals. It has also geofenced hundreds of smaller churches across the country, reaching a further 3.8 million Christians, primarily in urban locations. So now you're talking about 7.6 million, 7.7 million Christians being targeted specifically. A wide range of Christian denominations has been targeted, including some traditionally associated with the conservative right wing, like the Southern Baptists and Pentecostals, generally associated. But the operation also focuses on others, such as the United Methodist Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the Churches of Christ, and the American Baptist Churches USA. I'm guessing they would also be targeting the Mormons. A full list of confirmed churches and Christian colleges likely targeted can be found at the end of this investigation. So you can see if your church is one of them, if you still go to church. Some people do, I guess. Prime Minister war criminal Netanyahu has described the battle for the American public opinion to be the eighth front on the war, comparing it to the 7-front campaign he's already waging. All right. In order to win this crucial struggle, Israel is employing show faith by works to insert its messaging directly into the sacred sanctuaries of American churches, and doing it by using Christian Americans to do so as a front. So who is this company? They were involved in the 1,000 Pastors Project, an endeavor that saw some 1,070 American clergymen accept an all-expense-paid trip to Israel in December in order to equip them with the ability to serve as unofficial ambassadors for the country. Thousands more pastors are expected to be invited on a similar trip this year. They're just brainwashing everyone with our money. Show Faith Works has designed, published, and distributed pastoral resource packages to hundreds of churches, packages that include pro-Israel educational materials, like the ones discussed previously, information debunking pro-Palestinian popular arguments, which is crazy, and helps to organize group travel trips to Israel. They also recruit pastors to write newspaper op-eds and produce 3 to 5 minute pro-Israel video lectures designed to be played in churches across the nation. This is like a complete Hasbara operation, targeting a whole other religion to get on board with your monstrosity. There's also a special effort to reach minority communities with content specifically aimed at young women, Catholics, and Hispanic Christians being produced, while their pro-Israel material is also translated into Spanish, Vietnamese, and Russian. Remember that Russia is also very pro-Zionist, pro-Israel. Then we go to the American colleges who get the October 7th experience. What is that? Young American Christians are moving away from their traditional positions on the Middle East. The 2021 poll found that support for Israel among evangelicals aged 18 to 29 had dropped from 75% to just 34% over the past 3 years. Murdering babies incessantly daily in our news feeds tends to do that. To that end, dozens of Christian colleges with a total student body of well over 100,000 students have been geofenced. The Israel/Show Faith by Works project goal is to establish a major presence at Christian universities and seminaries, including making connections with professors and hiring student representatives to spread the word and hand out specifically designed merchandise. Charlie Kirk would have been a great ambassador for all of this, but he started seeing the cracks in the structure, started asking questions, and somebody decided he had to be eliminated. It certainly wasn't Tyler Robinson. But this new campaign includes creating an interactive traveling virtual reality exhibit called the October 7th Experience that will tour campuses showing atrocities from 10/7 without mentioning the Hannibal Directive and explaining the difficulties that the IDF face when fighting bad guys in hostile territory. They might even whitewash the Hannibal Directive, saying, how do you know who's a terrorist? You have to kill them all at that point, right? Celebrity agents of Israel. According to the documents, the October 7th Experience would be constructed by the company's unnamed Hollywood coordinator, who would use their Tinseltown connections to build a 5-star exhibit. My guess is that might be someone like a Sheryl Sandberg, who's already done something like this. The coordinator's job also included making connections with top-tier Hollywood talent to book Christian celebrities and Christian athletes to deliver pro-Israel messaging. Very specific targeting. Among the names floated as possible hires include actors John Voight and Chris Pratt. Oh, don't do it, Chris. Please don't. From the world of sports, they aim to recruit former NFL quarterback Tim Tebow, 3-time World Series winning pitcher Clayton Kershaw, and an NBA star Steph Curry. Curry has expressed a deep interest in Israeli culture, has told the press that he's learning Hebrew, has 2 Hebrew tattoos on his wrists, and has invested heavily in Israeli defense corporations founded and staffed by IDF officers. I know that Reef and Colin covered that too, and so did Alan. For more on the NBA's connections to apartheid, see the Mint-Press investigation from dunks to drones. The NBA has an Israel problem, again, which was read on INN News by Reef and Colin. Another key category of influencers the project was looking to recruit was celebrity megachurch pastors. These included people I've never heard of, Mark Driscoll, Rick Warren, and Greg Laurie. Together, it was hoped that this stable of prominent Christians could use their power to influence the opinions of millions of followers nationwide, shoring up Israel's sliding approval ratings in the United States. So you see how all these different things are kind of working together in unison, in concert, all managed, again, by one entity. All of this by one foreign country. This again, in other circles, would be seen as a foreign attack on the American public. Yeah, go start in Denver. I bet they get Tim Tebow for a bargain. I don't know, maybe. No, not Star-Lord. Yeah, sounds like they're Star-Lord too. So, how do we manipulate the media? The Israeli government considers the online war as important as its military attacks against Palestine, Lebanon, Iran, and beyond. The documents show that Show Faith by Works planned to flood the internet with digital content, websites, social media posts, podcasts, and videos in order to overwhelm both search engines and ordinary users with pro-Israel content. AI also, it wants to dominate the conversation for AI. Search engine optimization, the practice of enhancing media's visibility and search results, is a key part of this. SEO, but also GEO, meaning generative AI engine optimization. As the document explains, the group will optimize SEO traffic so that favorable coverage is increased and unfavorable information is decreased by redirecting nearly all web traffic to friendly sites based on key search terms, ensuring that our website is the top of all search results and prioritizing our information to key demographics. They have all of this data on you. They know what you're searching. They know where you're going. They know what products you shop. So therefore, they're going to target all of those keywords also and make sure that you're blanketed with Hasbara and propaganda when you search for them too. And anything that might counter that narrative will get pushed down in the algorithm. The less well-known tactic that the group is using is generative engine optimization, like I said, or GEO, a new technique aimed at influencing how AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Claude learn in order to make them espouse pro-Israeli views. Show Faith by Works plan to deluge the internet with fake questions and answers written by them in order that AI will parrot their talking points to users around the world. Other media projects listed include starting Christian podcasts designed to sneak pro-Israel messaging to listeners, paying for pro-Israel ads and messages to be read out on other faith-based shows, and hiring a pastor to keep up with Israel news and to highlight pro-Israel, anti-Hamas news. They literally want to have like the God Squad. They also plan to pay Christian influencers on social media to boast about the virtues of Israel and counter pro-Palestinian propaganda with response videos. People like Nick Sortor, people like who's the other dickhead the kid the Nick Shirley. This strategy is similar to that of a similar Israeli campaign called the Esther Project, which paid influencers a reported $7,000 per post that supported Israel. None of the individuals receiving the money, however, has followed the law by following a foreign agent under FARA, leading to rampant speculation online about who's become rich accepting cash from Tel Aviv. The problem is if it's washed through Clock Tower X and by Havas Media, is it really from Tel Aviv? I mean, technically, they're getting paid by Clock Tower X, so it's not Israeli money. In short, the project's goal is to create an enormous astroturfed wave of support for Israel in the Christian community by paying pastors, celebrities, and influencers to espouse their support and admiration for the country, its society, and its geopolitical goals. And the reason why we're so worried is because propaganda works. Celebrity endorsements work. They're taking search engine manipulation works. Unbeknownst to the tens of millions of Christians seeing these messages in their ads, search engine results, chatbot answers, or in their churches and universities, none of this is natural. Rather, it's the result of a deliberate and designed strategy and campaign to manipulate their thoughts and opinions into supporting an ethno-state carrying out a genocide, including against Christians. And then we get to Israel's war on Christians in West Asia. Palestine was once a land where large numbers of Christians and Muslims lived side by side in relative harmony. Today, that's not the case. During the Nakba, the 1948 establishment of Israel, the Israelis ethnically cleansed 90,000 Palestinian Christians and shut down thousands of churches. Dozens of churches, not thousands, sorry. Dozens of churches. Since 2023, the attacks on Christians have greatly increased. Every church in Gaza has been damaged or destroyed. This includes the historic church of St. Porphyrius, the third oldest Christian place of worship in the world. The site had been targeted multiple times by Israeli forces, leading to the partial collapse of the religious building, which can literally trace its history back to 425 AD. Also targeted was the Al-Akhli Church and the Baptist Hospital, where repeated Israeli strikes pulverized the complex, killing hundreds. Inside Israel, attacks on priests, pastors, and other clergy are a regular occurrence. Last month, footage of a 48-year-old French nun in East Jerusalem being pushed to the ground and kicked by a settler went viral, as did images of Israeli settlers gleefully desecrating a church and taking a sledgehammer to a statue of Jesus in southern Lebanon. For decades, Christians have had to endure the common practice of Jews spitting on them. This sort of overt daily hostility toward Christians has proved to be a problem for pro-Israel conservative American church groups traveling to the region. Last year, conservative commentator and podcaster Brandon Tatum drew international ridicule when, in an interview with Netanyahu, he thanked the Israeli prime minister and revealed that his Christian group was only spit on once during their trip to his country. One of the Show Faith by Works' key talking points is that it promotes, however, is that Israel protects Christians like no other nation in the Middle East, which is also not true. Then we've got American Christians losing faith in Israel. By numbers, support for Israel among Christians is crashing. This is reflective of a broader trend across the country. An April poll conducted by Pew found that only 37% of Americans see Israel in a favorable light, as opposed to 60% unfavorably. My question would be, what the fuck is wrong with the 37%? For decades, Israel has enjoyed widespread support from American Christians, particularly evangelical Protestants, as many believe its existence is a prerequisite for the end of days when Jesus Christ will return to earth to establish his heavenly kingdom. Nevertheless, its popularity, especially among younger Christians, is cratering, falling to just 34%, if you believe polling. This age discrepancy is partially down to different patterns of media consumption. Elderly Americans continue to get their news from TV networks owned and controlled by billionaires like Larry Ellison and Rupert Murdoch, both of whom are extremely close personal friends and passionate supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's expansionist policies. There's a whole other article that Alan did and that Reef and Colin read on INN News about Rupert Murdoch's ties to Israel and to Netanyahu. Younger Americans, by contrast, rely primarily on social media as their number one source of news. Explaining this phenomenon, Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the pro-Israel pressure group the ADL, stated that we have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem. And so what did they do? To that end, Israel's poured vast amounts of resources into targeting Americans. The government's yearly public relations budget has ballooned to $730 million, a roughly 100-fold increase on pre-October 7th levels. And it's Americans that are the prime targets of Israel's focus. Indeed, the word target appears 44 times in the 86-page document, indicating that Show Faith by Works sees them as threats to be neutralized. Christians report that being singled out like this in their sacred place of worship feels like a violation. They don't really care, but it feels like it. Millions of American Christians are being secretly spied upon and bombarded with propaganda. Christians in Palestine, Lebanon, and the broader region, meanwhile, are surveilled, harassed, and bombarded with drones and missiles. In both cases, Israel is carrying out a coordinated, sophisticated, and sustained attack on the Christian community. In Palestine, however, they're paying for it with their lives. Then now follows the list of all the places of worship targeted, right? So here's his list. Again, hundreds and hundreds of churches and universities, alphabetically. Shout out to Alan over at Mint Press. The last INN one-on-one that I did was with Alan McLeod at Mint Press News. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alex. I know it's late. I know I'm going long tonight. I got more too. But just a lightning round. So that was the long Alan McLeod article. I love you all. Thank you for staying with me. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Okay, like Mint Press, like Alan, we're completely user-funded here. The ways to do that, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, code-fee.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, patreon.com/Indie News Network, at indiemediatoday.com over on Substack where we're live now. INNnewsletter.com is our other Substack for the network where there's 5 podcasts that you can subscribe to and a weekly update that goes out every Friday. And IndieNewsNow.com, the name of the show. It's also the name of the website that you could find this article and other links to this article and all the other articles basically that we did tonight on the show. You can watch us live there. You can pick up merch there, or you can tip the network, all at IndieNewsNow.com. Okay. Wow. My throat's starting to get tired, but I have more. I do. And this is, again, important stuff. But I'm going to let somebody much better looking and more talented than I do the talking for the next couple of minutes. I'm not sure. I've brought a couple of videos from this list. So we're going to do the lightning round. I got 3 things, and then we'll get to the GoFundMes. This lady, Nicole Janae, I think you all know who she is. She's funny. Her videos hit really hard all the time. Well, she and Todd Hickey, and I think you all know him. He's an Irish activist, and I think he's a comedian. They decided to do a new show called Now, Noow, okay? Not on Our Watch. And it's like a funny, snarky, sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek version of the news that I would absolutely... It's like a better version of a John Oliver show. Okay? So I'm going to play one of the segments that came out recently. Go follow her at Nicole Janae 1. Again, independent, totally user-funded.
Remember when saying Palestine got you instantly canceled? Well, it didn't get any better now, but losing agents, losing roles, losing your entire mind. But promoting real estate over graves, that's totally fine. That's just savvy marketing, baby, right? Enter Gwyneth Paltrow, the queen of detached delusion and evil, selling luxury penthouses right next to a slaughterhouse. Come for the sunshine and stay for the apartheid. Is there a goop jade egg for complicity? Because your moral compass, Gwyneth, it's shoved straight up there. Oh look, a bombing. It's perfect for my aesthetic. You aren't just tone deaf, Gwyneth, you are demonic. Stepping over bodies to check the floor plans, no? Hope that infinity pool washes off the blood. Well, spoiler alert, it won't. But great tank. And we have Madame Helen Mirren. Oh wow, she was charmed by the magical energy of armed theft, watching people get dragged from their ancestral homes. The profound romance of ethnic cleansing. Did the scream sound like Shakespeare to you, Helen? To flee or not to flee? To snipe or not to snipe? Now shut up, Helen, you absolute historical goal. You don't get to play a hero on screen while romanticizing literal robbery and slaughter in real life. This isn't just staying silent anymore, people. Silence was last year's cowardice. This is partnership. They are publicly holding hands with actual monsters, gift wrapping mass murder in premium marble and parasite real estate. Sure, it's genocide, but the crown molding. Well, guess what? You out of touch parasites. The cultural wind is shifting and you are cooked. You're going down and nobody is saving you. No publicist can ever spin this level of evil. So enjoy your stolen blood-soaked mirage because the pitchforks are coming and they are free. Well, those news got me really pissed off.
I like her. So yeah, they're weekdays 7 Central Europe time. It's like midday. So check that out. You'll see the clips all over Twitter. Again, at Nicole JENES.
Remember when saying Palestine?
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. So yeah, go follow her. This is another one that I thought was really significant. I don't know how important it's going to end up being, but it was a crack, a tiny little fissure. I have not seen any NATO Western country really step up to criticize anything Israel has done. No ally of the United States has really been very critical of Israel outside of maybe Spain, right? Germany especially has been fanatically, rabidly pro-Israel. However, Germany rejects presence of permanent Israeli troops on Lebanese territory. Is something starting to shift even slightly? I've never even seen anything like this. So what happened? Germany said on Monday that it is opposed to a permanent Israeli occupation of Lebanese territory following statements by Israel Katz, who stated that they wouldn't leave. The federal government's position is quite clear. We reject the permanent presence of Israeli troops on Lebanese territory, nor must the civilian population be prevented from returning to where they live. I've never heard a German official actually say those words about Israel. Okay, they were underscored by government spokesman Stefan Cornelius, who reiterated German support for Lebanon's territorial integrity. Are they starting to get nervous? Are they starting to realize that Israel may want Germany next? Okay, there was and is no restriction on IDF soldiers in Lebanon for operating to remove threats. Nonsense. All right. So I wanted to mention that I saw this crack in the armor that Germany, even one of their ministers, was rejecting permanent Israeli troops. And that's got to be a positive sign, because nobody's done that yet. I get it. Yes, a temporary occupation of Lebanon is to find the terrorists, right? Look, but permanent occupation, saying no to permanent occupation is a good thing. Okay. The third thing here I had was that Florida has shut down Alligator Alcatraz. Holla freaking Luya. They only spent $1 billion to brutalize immigrants, and they didn't actually let anybody go. They just relocated everybody. But I still, again, think that it's significant that one of the most dangerous facilities is now closed, hopefully permanently, but we don't even know that. There was also an article I read today about East Montana in Texas, which is another one of these awful facilities that you've never heard of, that many people have already died at, and they're trying to keep under wraps. Okay. That was it for... There was one other article I had gotten from Payday Report, and it talked about how 80% of local reporters had disappeared in the last 20 years. That the jobs just disappeared and didn't come back. Mostly due to consolidation. All right. But yeah, you've got demonstrators protesting against ICE, demanding the closure against Alligator Alcatraz back in January. So I'm happy to see Alligator Alcatraz, or Alligator Auschwitz, as we called it, closed. But they were just transferred out, and that the giant tents and cages had been emptied. So all that money spent for what? For 1 year of temporary displacement or holding of people, treating them like cattle? For what? Fuck the Trump administration, man. All right. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I'll do the GoFundMes. I know it's late, and we'll get out of here. So thank you, everyone, for hanging with me. Okay. GoFundMes. One of the things we do with this platform is that we showcase our friends and family and members of the audience who need help. And about a month ago, Will reached out to me. Will has been in our chats and friends of the network since we started this thing. Told me that his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer and she's now undergoing chemo. They have no insurance at this point, and they need help. So if there's anything anybody can do there to donate and to support their GoFundMe, it looks like it's stalled out in the last week. It was $4,090 last week. It's still at $4,090. So I know he's doing DoorDash and he's doing what he can to get by. And she's working on reduced hours for part-time, and now she's undergoing treatment on top of it. So it's just, fuck the American healthcare system, because GoFundMe has become the healthcare system. Okay, those are the boys. This is Elizabeth with one of the boys. All right, and she's now going through breast cancer treatment. So please try to help her if you can. Okay, on top of that, we've got, of course, Natalia. Working mother taken by ICE, please help. And this was almost a year ago at this point. Sad to say. Routine traffic stop. Descent in Bloom wrote a beautiful article talking about this, talking about the business of traffic stops in Ohio and of locking up immigrants and of putting people into ICE detention facilities and keeping them there and being paid daily out indefinitely. All right, so again, this is the sister-in-law for Cowboy Kitty, who's in our chats, maybe tonight, but definitely regularly, in front of the show, friend of the network. You see Natalie and us donating to this campaign. Thank you so much for that. But Natalia was pulled over for a registration check. They suspected her of drunken driving. She wasn't, and but they deemed her in some violation somehow and deemed her for deporting. She has asylum in this country, and I've read the asylum paperwork. I've read Cowboy Kitty's kind of conversation, what he could scribble down while he talked to her a couple of months ago from within the facility, and it's not good. She needs to get out of there. It's just awful. I'm really sorry, and it sucks. So if you can help out Natalia and hook us up with a couple of bucks there, it greatly appreciated and much needed. I know Anthony said that he had distributed out money so far, so they're back, I think, at zero. But we'll more from him. I'll find out next week. Then we got Justice for Aspen. It's been more than a year now, and they still do need to fund the legal defense. They do need to fund living expenses, and they need to fund expert witnesses that can testify on just what the prison system could do to this woman who's facing decades in prison. You could learn more about her story here from Descent in Bloom at the link tree. The GoFundMe link is there, a link to the fundraiser that we did, a link to one-on-one conversation. All of that is there at linktr.ee/justice, the number 4 Aspen. Everybody's starting to fade out. I know I'm cutting out. And then finally we got Shanda. We have the Fuck Shanda Master Cancer Collection. We lost Shanda almost 90 days ago. Can't believe it already. Oz, our brother.
My picture taken with any politics.
Oz did his first live stream back since we lost Shanda on his Beauty and the Boomer channel, Hot Summer Nights. And he teased that he will be coming back with a new show, I believe starting July 11th is the target date. So we're happy to see all that. Okay, I'm sure he wouldn't want you to see him like that. Here he is watching Electronic Intifada and doing just a normal show like he would normally do to try to dust the cobwebs off and get the rust off and get back into stream game time shape. And I love you, Oz, and I'm so glad you're back for that. And I see a lot of people who are here in chat were also in chat for that as well. Glad to see it. And then, of course, we have the Fuck Shanda Master Cancer Collection. Not fuck, don't. The Shanda Master Fuck Cancer Collection. Oh my God, that she would laugh if she heard me say that. Fuck cancer. We love you, Shanda. Okay, if you want to pick up a t-shirt, if you want to pick up a sweatshirt, if you want to pick up a tank top, you can do that. Go to IndieNewsNow.com, click on the merch link, and you can pick yourself up one of those. And remember that Shanda was a Indie Media Award honoree, one of the best of the best who does what she did. Okay, everyone. I know that was a really long one. I'm beat. I love you all. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And I will see you next Tuesday night, fam. Have a good night. See you all. Jeez. Rookie move, Andy. No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to me, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you